Yes. There we go.
No. Ah!
Hi, this is Dale Lear, designer of TRS-80 Color Baseball, and you're listening to CoCoTALK.
This is CoCoTALK, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy Color computer. It's time to drop your socks, grab your real-time clocks, and let's rock.
CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world, keeping the Tandy flame alive. We may be mocked, but we'll never stop, 'cause CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world.
Welcome to CoCoTALK, episode Z80. Wrapping up the Septandy.
CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world, keeping the Tandy flame alive. We may be mocked, but we'll never stop, 'cause CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world.
Hello, everybody. Well, being this is the last Saturday of September, we're kind of wrapping it up.
Yeah, but I expect there's going to be a flurry of videos over the next week until the end of September, which is Friday. So next week we'll have more to cover, I'm pretty sure. But
Okay.
yeah, it's the last week of new steps of Tandy stuff. So
Let's see who we got on here today. Upper left-hand corner, we have the news with L. Curtis Boyle.
hello, everyone. And it will be a little bit out of order today. I've got a heart out, so we'll be doing the news first. So get your pillows ready for the nap.
We're going to have an early nap today. Next over, Ron Delvaux.
Hello. Welcome,
And
everybody.
Yours truly. Next line, we have Ricky Lind.
Howdy, folks.
Any project update for you today?
Not really. I've been working all week.
Okay.
My CoCo work has been on Windows, so
In the center of
sorry.
the Hollywood Squares, we have Grant Leedy, who is muted and we cannot hear.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? That's how Curtis likes it, with my mute on.
Yes.
Indeed.
Now you just do something
Yeah.
about that picture part too. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I'm the beautiful guy. Well, definitely more beautiful than that thing that just came in at the bottom by David Ladd.
on your manners, folks.
And next over, we have Ken Waters back home at the Ponderosa.
What is news over already? I have to do game on. Oh, sorry, I was asleep.
Then next over, Mark Overhoser.
Hello there, glad to be here.
And we have a rare sighting, Brian Weasler.
Hello,
Good
all.
to see you.
Good to be back.
And then we have an even rarer sighting, Steve Strobridge.
I'm just here
Who?
because I heard that it's not going to be a lot of news today. So
I think he came here to show off his hair.
What
nice,
color?
isn't it?
What color is that?
Rust red.
it's a deep burgundy,
Deep burgundy.
like
So-
my feelings for you, Grant.
Oh, thanks.
So did you get all your panic buying done?
Oh yeah, we have a tropical storm warning, and so all the doomsday preppers and apocalypse panickers were out there today as I'm trying to get like water and propane. So yeah, it was a fun morning.
You just fill the water bottle up with the hose, garden hose. It still comes out of the tap.
From what I hear, you get lots of rainwater. Can't you just use that?
I was actually thinking about that as I'm waiting in these insane lines.
Here we just use Amazon and Walmart Plus.
Didn't you know the storm was coming like a week ago?
No, the cone of death just shows up. We know it's going to be here Tuesday, and so that's why the world is freaking out now, or at least South Florida is.
Yeah, I mean, Eastern Canada got hammered with the remnant of Fiona there, and they've got 500,000 people with knocked out power right now. So,
Well, last on the panel, David Ladd.
We could skip him.
Why, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on CoCoTALK today. We've got an interesting day yet again. We'll see how the train wreck goes.
we forgot to check levels with David before we started the show, apparently.
Well, even if we have him on 0, he's still too loud.
True.
So, and we'll see how well my internet holds up today.
Yeah, you got some new equipment to try that hopefully will help solve some of the problems. So,
yeah, finally replaced my 10-year-old modem. We'll see if that helps.
That might be the problem.
Yeah, they do get tired.
So, okay. Let's see.
Send it over to Curtis.
Yep. Here, let's start the news.
From around the world, what you need to know. Get caught up on News with L. Curtis Boyle.
And now a Muppet News Flash.
I can't share yet, so.
Okay, now you can.
Okay, so there's some stuff that's officially part of Septandy. There's some stuff that's not officially part of Septandy, and there's just a lot of CoCoTandy stuff happening. So I'm not even going to bother mentioning which ones are ones are officially tagged or not. If you want to find that out, you can just search for Septandy on YouTube. You might see on the screen a few times, but this is now upcoming the last week of Septandy. So the complete wrap up will be next week because the last official day is next Friday. So Saturday show will cover that. I'm expecting a flurry of stuff from everybody on this panel here to join in on that. Anyway, to start us off, Color Computer Programming on YouTube, who's the guy you've been kind of like learning along with him as he goes through basic here, has done some further work on his little piano program, which is basically just a basic using P Mode 4, drawing it, and he's added some more notes, and he's got it so it animates the notes jumping across, and it just uses a standard play command. I'll play a little bit of it, but I think we kind of covered it last week a bit too.
Couple of weeks. I don't have the time for programming that
I know what that's
like. But I'm still doing it, and we have 6 notes now, I guess. So if you want to hear them, if this will work. Okay.
So I think he's got to start switching, like the way the notes are done. It kind of switches the octave in the middle of the letters, so you have to kind of control the octave of the O command because it's a little bit out of order. But it's kind of cool. I mean, it's nicely presented, and like you said, he's just learning basic as he goes here, and he's been covering all kinds of projects with graphics and text and all kinds of things. So it's fun. I know Alan Huffman has mentioned that's one of his favorite channels to watch because it kind of brings back the experience of when we were learning it all back in the 80s type thing. Sorry, go ahead.
It would be neat to see it kind of animate the notes as it was playing through things, to see kind of the notes dance back and forth, or like a player piano look or something like that. That would be kind of cool. So it opens up some possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, he does have the little musical staff move between the notes as you go, and I think it's joystick controlled, which actually, if you watch, he tries to he takes some sheet music and tries to play with the 6 notes he's got, and he doesn't have enough of the sharps. Doesn't any sharps and flats, so he can't quite do it, but. The thing is, it looks like he has to move the joystick and let it go down to the note that he wants to do. So if you're skipping 4 notes over, it's got some time delay. So I think that's something he probably will have to change the keyboard so you can just hit a key and it instantly does it. Kind of like Synther 7 or Synther 77 does. Anyway, fun stuff. Now, the next one he came up with here later in the week is kind of a weird, I don't know if it's a bug or it's the way the interpreter works. This is something Alan Huffman may have to look into, actually. Because he's kind of just plowing through basic, and we'll get to his stuff a little bit later here. But if you take a look at the source code here, you can see he's misspelled else by accident, but it doesn't fall through like you would expect. Like in this case, A equals 1. If A equals 0, which it's not, it should go then 3 else n. So you would figure it would either end, but it.
And run this and see what happens. What happens? It goes on to line.
So in this case, it didn't end, and it went through to the 3. Now, I think my personal opinion is I think it's just because it if then looks for an else in the same line, And if it doesn't find it, if the if part fails, I think it just goes to the next line and it ignores syntax errors and stuff. Like normally this should have given you a syntax error, right? It shouldn't have just gone through.
No, because A equals 1. So that's you're right. You're right. Right. It should have went to end. And
or it should have given a syntax error, the ESLE, right?
If it did, if A equals 0, then 3,
but
and it wasn't, then it would play 3 anyway. So if the if ends when ESLE comes along, then you're still going to do 3.
Well, it should have skipped 3, went to the. Okay.
Well, no, because A equals 0, then 3. Okay, it isn't. So I go to 3 now.
Well, no, it should go to the ESL, right?
Well,
what did you call it? I think the thing is, why didn't it give a syntax error on the
on the ESL part?
Right, why did it continue? But I think that's what it did. It just continued and ignored the SL end.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the source code in the spectral books, the disassemblies, but I think when you have an if that fails the test, in this case, which it would, because A equals 0 is not true. So it won't do the then 3. I think it parses through the end of the line looking for the word else to see if there's anything to do, but it doesn't find it. So it just goes on to the next line. That's kind of what I'm guessing is happening.
Like if you had no else at all.
If you had no else at all.
Yeah.
You would need an extra line 2.5 to put some condition to reveal that, I guess.
Yeah, I would guess if you put in a line 2.5, that would execute line 2.5 and then line 3, because it's failing that A equals 0 and moves on.
Yeah.
And not reading the ESL at all.
Yeah. I think it just literally, it doesn't find the word else, so it hasn't tokenized it, and it just figures that's, I don't know what it figures. I would have thought it would have given a syntax error trying to parse it, though. So that is a bit of a.
Would this work in Basic 09 the same?
I haven't tried it, so I'm not sure. I mean, that it's a bit different in Basic 09 because you got if, and if, and a bunch of other things to kind of wrap it more cleanly. Whereas on Microsoft Basic, it's a bit more loosey-goosey. So I don't know. That's a good question.
Thank you.
It's an interesting quirk. He goes through a couple different, tries of it, change the variables and stuff here to show that if A is 0, it does go to 3. He actually inserts some lines and stuff there. But Alan, who's really been going through this kind of stuff and going through the spectral books and finding weird quirks in Basic already, I think this is something he should tackle. And he has mentioned that he likes this channel himself, so he watches it. So hopefully he actually does an article on it. I don't know if it'll be part of Septandy because I think he pre-recorded all the stuff that's coming up. He basically had 30 blogs already pre-queued before Septandy started. But this would be an interesting one to follow up on to see exactly what it is doing. Okay, next up, Joel Reese posted his support of VTL2, which stands for Very Tiny Language, which is, well, it's very small, very simple. It's sort of a little bit basic syntaxy, but not quite. And it's obviously very limited, but the entire basic is less than 2K, including its variables, its stack, and the code itself. So it's very, very small. And he's been kind of translating it from the 6800, 6801, and he did an MC10 version of 6803 before. He's now finished converting the first draft of it to 6809. And you can go read his, testing it and how it works and, comparing it with basic. And then you can actually go download it and give it a shot on the Dragon or the CoCo. So. And he's got some other blog posts here on explaining how VTL works, how their expressions work, because the syntax is a little bit different than basic. But if you want to have a very simple programming language that's very, very compact and small, so if you ran this in 64K RAM mode, your code could be like 62K long. It's a pretty interesting little experiment.
Is transliterating an actual word, accepted word? Is it a new word or?
I have no idea. I don't have a dictionary handy to check. Feel free to research us and report back to us on that, Ron.
Yeah. Really?
I honestly don't know. Next to that, Brenda, is it Make or Mackie? I can't remember how she pronounced his last name. I'll say Make for now.
Mahi.
I have no idea. She did tell me quite a while ago when we first started featuring some of her stuff, but I can't remember now. At any rate, you may recall she was working on this project to put the SCART adapter box, like if you look at the bottom of the CoCo 3 where the RGB connector is, there's that hollowed out space that's quite big. It's way bigger than the cable needs. And she was going to make this box because she, doesn't like having to unplug it when you're moving it around stuff. And she was going to have this little adapter kind of in this little 3D printed box here, so that basically you just unplug the cable from an actual connector instead of it floating all over the place. So she was about to do her first 3D print earlier in the week here, and this is the design that she came up with. And then as a follow-up, she actually did get it 3D printed. So there it is. And then she has a picture. Oh, maybe it was in the other one. Shoot. Previous post. Okay, just a second. I'll grab it again. She's uploaded this to Thingiverse too. So I think she had a picture in the comments of what it actually looks like.
There's a black one.
Well, that's just the actual box stuff, but she actually hasn't installed, and I want to show you what that, because it's kind of hard to explain. Somewhere in here I saw it. Honest.
You're
There
getting
we go.
close.
There you go.
Yeah. So basically that would mount permanently, and you just have to unplug the one DB9 instead of doing the whole SCART and everything else.
But what is that connector there? What is that DB9 supposed to go to if this is SCART?
She was kind of explaining there's like a little adapter cable, I think is how that works.
To go to her SCART box, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Remember, it's a 10-pin plug, but one of them's not used. There's
Oh yeah,
only
so
one more.
DB9 would work perfectly, and DB9s are super, super common because that's an RS-232 standard and joystick standard, a bunch of things.
So this is basically a slightly more modular plug for the RGB connection under the CoCo. So it's less kind of loosey-goosey in there.
Yeah. Well, her purpose was that you basically would attach this and have it just leave the RGB, because she was worried about the RGB double header connector. You're like, every time you jostle, like to unplug it to move the CoCo around, or if you're taking it to trade shows, whatever, that you might bend the pins and wreck the connector. And this would actually mount permanently, so that never gets touched again. A DB9 is much more robust than a double header connector. That was her purpose. So.
Okay. Clever.
So I wonder if that is lower than a foot.
Well, she might be able to adapt that a little bit. I mean, she's still working on the final designs. I know she said her 3D printer, she probably should have used a different, you guys know 3D printers better than I do. Like there's different types of 3D printing, like resin versus some other things that she was thinking she might have had to do something slightly different, or a different
material,
the raw printing material for the way her design works. So she's still in the midst of, experimenting, but it is basically doing what she wanted it to do now. And if you guys are interested in giving it a shot or taking a look at the project, it's on Thingiverse, and the link will be in the show notes on our Discord. And you guys can fiddle with it or experiment with it yourselves too. Okay, next up, in the Motorola 6809, 6309, 6800 assembly language group on Facebook, which I actually should start checking a bit more often because it looks like there's been a few interesting things happening there lately. Graham Toll posted a couple things. So the first one here is he's started work on a 6809 super optimizer, as he calls it. And he has a link to the C source code. Now, right now, it sounds like he's just basically got the framework up for it, but the purpose of it is to actually take 6809 code and then have this program optimize it for you instead of you having to figure out all the optimization stuff. Now, obviously, it can't catch every trick in the book. But for those of you that are just learning 6809 or don't want to take the time to go through and hand tweak optimize like idiots like me and Bill Noble do all the time in Nitrous, this might be a good project. Like if you have a program that's basically done and working, but you want to try to optimize it for a game or something so it runs faster. Once this project is done, this might be a help for you doing that. I don't know how sophisticated he's going to get it. Like it could be stuff like storing something direct page to do a manipulation on rather than the stack because it's a cycle faster, or I don't know if he's going to get stuff like stack blasting or anything fancy like that. So I'll have to see how far he takes the project. But it'd be nice for especially for beginner assembly programmers to, kind of give you an edge, and maybe you can even compare like your source versus the optimized one and learn the new techniques or different techniques that might be faster for you. So that was his first post that I covered. And next, this is kind of cool. He made a little template, and it's in really high res. You can print it out, but it's actually 4 common chips with all the pinouts actually labeled by their function, not just the pin numbers. So if you and it's got the pin numbers on there as well, so that if you're just taking a look at the chip and you have this little, guide sitting beside you type thing. I mean, I'm sure some of your hardware guys have probably memorized all these already, but if you're trying to remember which pin is data line 3 on the 6809 or data line 0 on the 6821 or the 6850, which is a serial chip, etc. So it's a nice, I would imagine it's a nice little guide. Do you guys have anything like this, you hardware developer guys? Like
yeah,
Rick
sometimes, yeah.
or Mark or either Mark?
Well, unfortunately, modern tools like KiCad killed all of this because it just knows. So I draw off of its footprint, and
so you don't actually see a label when you're doing in KiCad thing.
well, it's there, but you don't really need to care. Like right now, if I was doing something using the 6809, I would stick DO through D8 tags on those chips and AO through A15 tags through those chips, and I would never route a single wire. It would just be done for me. So you don't really need to know yourself like you used to when this kind of thing was really common. I mean,
okay, so this would be more for the hobbyist. That's like you using a breadboard and just trying to wire a project manually. More than
exactly. I'd have 20 of these. I'd stick one on the circuit board so I could run my bodge wires without having to think about it.
Or if you're troubleshooting and need to know, where the pins are.
Right, but anymore I haven't.
Where to stick your meter.
Well, and that's really the other thing. So like in KiCad, I can click on a pin in the schematic and the circuit board diagram will highlight in the other screen. So I don't need to do that translation in my brain anymore, which I'm getting really lazy, but I really like that.
I'm all for lazy, so I understand. Anyway, if you guys want to grab it, it's on Facebook in the 6809, 6309, 6800 semi-language programming group, and it's like a high-res one. You can print it out, and it's quite clean. So if anybody wants to do the old-style breadboard thing instead of being all fancy and modern like Rick, you can go ahead and get it.
Of course, we like the hand layout boards.
Fancy and modern. Two things you think of when you think of Rick.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Could be.
Or the CoCo.
Yeah, when he graces us with his presence when he's not touring with ZZ Top.
ZZ.
And I think that one on the right was an EEPROM.
Yeah, I think it was too. It's mentioned in the comments specifically what it was. So next up, and I'm not sure which Dave they're referring to here. I don't think it's David Ladd, though David Ladd can confirm that. William Major actually on the Color Computer Archive posted that somebody named Dave has uploaded scans of the entire run of Hot Cocoa from June of 83 to February of 86. So it's absolutely complete collection now. So any of you who didn't get Hot Cocoa back in the day or want to take a look at it, that's the complete run. And they're quite good quality scans. It's actually better than some of the rainbows that are on the archive because there's a few there that are missing pages out of order. There's some like blue and yellow glitching on quite a few of the pages. I'm not sure what happened there because I know they were a bit better quality before, but I haven't looked at everyone, obviously, but I've looked at several of them. These are quite pristine. So a quick question for you guys here. And this is just kind of for interest's sake. For those of you that were buying CoCo magazines back in the day, and we had like Color Computer News, Rainbow, Color Computer Magazine, Hot Cocoa, plus a few smaller ones like Spectrogram and stuff. What were the ones that you guys had as your favorite?
I would say Rainbow was my favorite.
I had 3.
Rainbow was all I had, so I didn't really have a choice.
Okay.
And there's also another one too, if I remember correctly, called Family Computing, because that's another one I used to get.
Yeah, that was a cross-platform one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Creative Computing was. Yeah.
Color
like myself personally, my favorite was Color Computer News until it died, because it was more technical and really got into the nitty-gritty stuff, whereas Rainbow was more beginner-oriented, I guess. And they kind of changed that later as time went on. And if you wanted ads, like you want to find out what was available for the CoCo, obviously Rainbow was by far the best because that's where all the advertisers went. But I much preferred CCN.
Hot Cocoa seemed to be very hardware oriented.
Yeah, it kind of took over somewhat from CCN. That was right around the same time. Like the first issue of Hot Cocoa was June. The last issue of CCN, I think, was September of that same year, 83. And we had Bill Sias on to interview, and he was talking about the whole divorce and a bunch of other things that happened that caused the machine to fold, or the magazine to fold. But this one kind of picked up where CCN left off in some ways.
Yeah, James Diffendafer says he liked CCN better. I don't remember seeing those wherever I had access to them. So Rainbow is the only one I remember seeing. And then there was the one you got from Tandy. What was that?
Cheers to Microcomputer News.
Microcomputer News. So that was basically free. I don't remember having a spectrum of CoCo offerings at my local bookstores and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, up here, I mean, Ken, you can tell me, like, were you in North Battleford still during this time period?
Yes, I was.
Because here, Color Computer Magazine was carried in like Canadian Tire, of all places. Hot Cocoa was carried in Kohl's and W.H. Smith's, as was Rainbow, though that was a bit later. Like, we didn't start getting those until like 83, 84. We didn't get it at the beginning. There was a small local Apple shop that actually carried Rainbow in 82. That's where I first found it.
Yeah, that's where I first found mine too, the Apple shop in North Battleford. So I used to get Compute and Rainbow from there.
Yeah, and we had one downtown computer shop, which was kind of more business oriented. For some reason, carried CCN for like the last 3 months before it died. So that's where I first discovered it, and then I got some back issues. But yeah, I mean, here, I mean, if you were going to a regular bookstore, like a chain, you would get Hot Cocoa, Rainbow. And that was pretty well at Color Computer Magazine. Like I said, for some reason, Canadian Tire sold it. Don't have a clue why, but that's where I bought mine.
Oh, they did have a computer section.
Yeah, well, they're selling Amigas and Commodore 64s and stuff there too. So
and Adams.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, because when I go to get my tires replaced, that's what I'm thinking of. I might as well pick up a computer while I'm here.
You can read a magazine while you wait on your oil change, you know.
Actually, they still sell a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with automotive, so I guess they haven't really changed. No computers, though. Anyway, for those of you that want to relive the glory days of Hot Cocoa here, the entire run's now on the Computer Archive. And go ahead.
I used to get my Rainbow from Radio Shack toward the end.
Yeah, Radio Shacks here never carried Rainbow.
We had one.
They were persona non grata. Anything that wasn't Tandy. Tears City Microcomputer News, that was the only thing you can get.
Well, they actually supported our Color Computer Club. That's why.
I'm jealous.
So did anyone else?
Go ahead, Rick.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
So did anyone else buy the computer shopper that was like 786 pages of
I did occasionally. I mean, that was looking for hardware for cheap. That was what I bought it for. And they had that one CoCo column. I can't remember the guy's name now.
Exactly. I would pick it up just to get the one column because there was so little stuff I could find in my little.
I heard you, Nick Marentes.
Oh, sorry. I have having microphone problems. That's all. I think I've got it going.
Yeah, we heard you. Welcome.
Yep. Welcome, Nick.
And by the way, I was trying to say so many times that Color Computer Magazine was my favorite, but I realized, hang on, they can't hear me. Let me do a test. Nitrous 9 sucks. No one heard it. So it's not working.
That's when I would have just kicked you off. So
I'm sorry, Nick. Can you repeat that again, please?
I love OS 9.
Yeah, or you forgot to add, except for the trash can.
Here's a new tagline for Nitrous 9: Ease of Deuce.
And actually, Nick, now that you're on, because that's another country to talk about. So what? I mean, you guys had Australian Rainbow. Did you guys have the regular Rainbow as well?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Because that was kind of a weird thing, because the Australian Rainbow kind of republished some Rainbow stuff, and that was a direct thing with Lonnie. And then they also did some of their own stuff unique.
Originally, American Rainbow wasn't available, so some guy had started up the Australian Rainbow, which was basically a licensed copy of American Rainbow. But then eventually American Rainbow became available, and then they decided that, well, we'll make an Australian specific version called Australian CoCo. And I used to buy that as well as the American Rainbow and the Color Computer Magazine and Hot Cocoa as well. I used to buy them all, but
so you had all those in Australia too? That's
yeah,
cool.
We had them all. Yeah, they did. In the early years, it did, yeah.
Now, did you guys ever have Color Computer News? I don't know if Bill would have been able to sell in Australia.
No, not that one. No.
That's too bad. But yeah, I mean, as far as the presentation, I mean, honestly, Rainbow, I always refer to that as one for ads, but Color Computer Magazine actually was more slickly produced, I think.
Yeah, I like that one the best. Yeah,
that one looked like a real magazine. Rainbow started getting towards that later on, but at the beginning you could tell it was kind of like homemade. CCN was really homemade because they had spelling mistakes, everything else, because you didn't really care about that kind of stuff. So
I love how this guy here is getting all the screen time while we talk about something that has nothing to do with
Yeah,
him.
and he's actually in our chat right now too. He just
is
joined
he
our
really?
Discord. So welcome, Albert Marsh. Here's your video, and welcome to our chat as well.
All right, here we go. Great segue.
Yeah. So Albert's actually just done I think he's done one previous Septandy video. This was the second one, and he was actually, Ron's going to love this one because he actually goes through DeskMate. And I won't play the whole video because it's 11 minutes long, but he kind of just mentions that this was kind of his word processor of choice, and he used the calendar and everything else, and he kind of goes through and demonstrates each piece of it. So I'll just play a little clip of it here, and the rest you can what happened. If you have any questions for Albert, feel free.
Just a moment, but first let's look at tried and true word processor I used in the late 80s. The original color computer DeskMate was the first Office application I utilized on my Color Computer 3.
It's bringing back fond memories, Ron.
DeskMate 3.
Well, that's Color Computer 2 version, isn't it?
Review
Yeah,
it again.
yeah, the original DeskMate for the CoCo 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know, Ron, obviously you've used it, and Albert in the chat obviously have used it. How many of the rest of you actually used DeskMate much back in the day? Because the DeskMate was the one they were trying to make cross-platform. They did DeskMate built into the Tandy 1000 series as well.
I only used the Tandy 1000 version. I never saw it on the CoCo.
Right.
Anybody else? Because this is one of those library style programs. It's like VIP library where you had VIP writer and spell and terminal and everything else here. And here you had calendar, ledger, a paint program, index cards, modem program, and a text editor.
Right.
I mean, I'll be honest, by the time DeskMate came out, I was already using like TeleWriter 64 or VIP Writer, which were much more advanced than these. And VIP, of course, had their whole library, and those programs were much more advanced too. So I didn't really, I would have viewed this more as like the beginner's integrated library type thing. But it ran under OS 9, so I have to give it some props. Now, I know Albert mentions in the video here that he's trying to get, or maybe mentioned it on the comments, but he's been trying to get DeskMate 3, like the CoCo 3 version running, which I know Ron's been bugging me about as well. And currently on the current versions of Nitrous 9, and I don't know what happened to cause this. I have to disassemble DeskMate and figure what's going on. But it actually is broken and doesn't work properly. So there's a few other games too that are having the same problem. Cave Walker doesn't play at the right speed, and a few other games as well. So I have to kind of go through and figure out what exactly is going on. But those will be a work in progress. I do want to get it working because I mean a lot of people have nostalgia for it. So, and Ron, did you use the original DeskMate much, or did you start on DeskMate 3? Oh, you did both. And I'm trying to remember because I think you talked about this before. Didn't you run your business somewhat on this?
Yeah, I used the what would it be? The text editor. I made up a form, and I had the computer in my truck, and on a inverter, and had a printer. And what I would do is make invoices. I'd letter people's windows, and then print out an invoice, and then have a copy of it, because I'd save it off on one of the data banks there, and put the date. And then when version 3 came out, it was nicer, and I still
it added 40 columns, 16 color paint program, etc.
Yeah, and so I have a whole bunch of floppies full of data, of invoices that I used it for. It was kind of cool to be able to, print it out in my van, and hand the guy a printed invoice instead of the old days before computers. You had a pad with you write it down just like they did at Radio Shack.
Yeah, like the carbon copy forms.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like we see at CoCo Fests.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty high tech.
Yeah. Now, one thing before we go off,
high tech before high tech was even in.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I will mention here is that the icons that, I don't know who programmed this for Tandy, but the icons they did like for the telephone for telecom and the text editor, the little book and stuff are actually quite well done considering, the low resolution screen they're doing.
Yeah.
But I have to say Nick's trash can is much better.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Because they did this kind of 3D thing on the main icons. The trash cans is this little 2D
sitting on top of a pillar or something right there. So
yeah, it's like a Roman column or something.
Well, I never used paint much. Ledger I didn't need. I did use the index card thing, and I did use telecom. I did go on 1200 baud, but it would wrap. But
what was the paint like? Was it any
no,
good
it's
at
just
all?
rudimentary.
Yeah, it was rudimentary.
Yeah, I first used the Tandy 1000 text version, and then when they came out with the graphical version, I copied that to my hard drive, and that paint program was halfway decent because I think they had a high-res 4-color mode that you can get some decent looking kind of color dithering effects and stuff.
Was the paint program on Decimate 3 improved much, Ron?
Not much.
So just they added the colors, and that was pretty.
Yeah,
they were done.
there was we had other stuff to use.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't Color Max or Color Max Deluxe or Coco Max 3 or anything. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why I went towards this is because back in the day that was our windowing. Windows was a big thing coming up, and we already had it.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember, the first Decimate on the CoCo came out in 85, maybe late 84.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's pretty early on. The whole integrated package where you had all these programs kind of linked together and could read each other's files was, in the CoCo that started with VIP, and then there were some other ones by some other companies that came out later. But I think that really started with the Super Color Writer series, and then they made VIP Library. That was like around the same time this came out. So that was kind of the whole shift of the industry at that point.
So is Albert, who did this video, is he like somewhat new to YouTube?
I've only caught his Septandy stuff here
okay.
the last while, so I don't know how active he's been on before.
Thanks for doing CoCo stuff, Albert.
Yeah, and then thanks for joining our Discord. Hope to see you there in some of the chat channels. Anyway, go check out his video, and I don't know if he has more Septandy coming up. He might be able to demonstrate the Decimate 3, booting on its own type thing. And I will try to get both Decimates running under Nitrous 9. I just have to get some time to get onto that.
He apparently claims CoCo Max 3 ruled.
Yeah, there's a bit of a competition there. Like Color Max 3, the original one came out a couple months ahead of CoCo Max 3, and that's what I bought it because I wanted a CoCo 3 editing graphics program, and I wasn't going to wait. So I got that. CoCo Max 3 was definitely better, had more features. But when Color Max Deluxe came out, that actually had some features that I really wanted that CoCo Max 3 didn't have, like direct GIF save and load type stuff. So I personally prefer Color Max 3 Deluxe. It also required 512K because it had some more advanced features. But I can definitely see like CoCo Max 3. If you were used to CoCo Max 2, you were already know how to use it type thing. Like it was pretty well identical, except for CoCo 3 features added. And then CoCo Max 3 worked really well with Max 10, which came out later if you want to do desktop publishing. So, it depends on what your purpose was.
Did you have all the fonts?
I didn't have all the font discs. I think I had one set.
I think there was 4.
Yeah, there was quite a few.
Did the Tandy Koala Pad come with any type of like pack-in art program, or you just have to use them?
I don't
whatever?
think so. It was just the pad, wasn't it?
I remember I had that. I also had the X-Pad, and I remember the X-Pad gave you some demo programs, and I ended up writing my own graphics drawing tools for the X-Pad. I just don't remember if the Koala Pad had a program or not.
Yeah. And Albert's asking here about Color Max Deluxe. I never knew, but I'd love to see it. I will tell you right now that the original authors have actually made that legally freeware. It's on the Color Computer Archive at colorcomputerarchive.com. And there is a patch version now that doesn't even need the high-res joystick interface. It uses the special programming timing technique that Sockmaster and Nick, who's on the panel, came up with to simulate high-res without needing a high-res joystick interface. Using, I think it's the timed leak of a capacitor as it drains or something. Nick, you can explain how that works. But basically, you don't even need the high-res interface to run it now.
Bonus.
Are you still awake there, Nick? Or did your microphone kick out again?
No, it's still here.
Crikey, Nitrous 9 sucks.
Well, if I want to make sure Nick's awake, I have to say something like 0 hours sucks.
Whoops, the microphone's working now.
Anyway, did I get that explanation right about the software high res?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
That's like hardware stuff, and I actually said it right. I'm amazed.
And I think Eric Gavrillak at one stage said he was doing a 6309 version of Color Max Deluxe, but I don't think he ever.
Yeah, he said he actually ran some tests and he had certain features running like 30 to 40% faster.
That would have been that would have been good.
Yeah, hopefully he does finish that because I would love to have that. we need more 639 optimized stuff, as we'll cover in another story a little bit later on.
Yeah.
Next up, part of Septandy, and this is from Pedro Pena, who's known as Rocky Hill on YouTube. And last week we did his hour video about redesigning his static RAM upgrade to use a through-hole design. And this is him actually assembling it. I won't play the whole thing of this because it's 20 minutes long. We'll play just a little bit at the beginning. Can I get you an idea?
In an earlier video, I made this board, designed this board here, and this board is meant to be a through-hole replacement for this board, which I made earlier. This is a 64K RAM board for the CoCo 2. I've just received this a couple hours ago, and what I want to do is attempt to assemble it in one take. Like I said, I will attempt to do that. And I'm not going to use anything fancy, you know, soldering iron. I'm not going to have a circuit holder or helping hands, or at least try not to use helping hands, so that, you know, you can see that you can assemble this with like the bare minimum number of tools or whatever.
Anyway, spoiler, it actually did work first try. And of course, this is designed for the 2-chip upgrade, which I think requires a CoCo 2B. That's the one that had, like, when the whole RAM fire in Japan happened, the RAM factory fire, and all the prices shot up. So they actually, Tandy manufactured some circuit boards that accepted both 8 4164s or a little satellite board with the 2 4464s to do the RAM upgrade, because basically try to pick whatever chips you can get for cheaper type thing. And for those of you that have CoCo 3s that picked them up on eBay or whatever with 128K, that uses 4 4464s. So if you're going to upgrade your CoCo 3 to 512 or 2 meg or 8 meg or whatever, keep those chips, because actually those would work on the original CoCo 2Bs, and you could actually just pop 2 of those in and upgrade a machine from 16 to 64K, basically for free, because you have the chips lying around. Now, this is a static RAM upgrade here, so this is a bit different. And being static RAM, this also will work with Brendan Donaghy's SAM doubler. So it would allow your CoCo 2, once you've installed this RAM upgrade and his SAM doubler thing, you can actually run a CoCo 1 or 2 at full 2 megahertz, just like the CoCo 3 does, RAM and ROM. And that requires a static RAM because it doesn't need to refresh. And that's what usually goes wrong when you do the double speed RAM on a CoCo 1 or 2. So,
but you do need the CoCo VGA if you're going to do the RAM or the clock doubler, though.
Yeah, I think the VDG couldn't handle the full speed.
So I'm a little confused. Does this bring your 16K machine to 64, and you're adding the extra RAM, but that's not as fast as the 16K on the motherboard, right?
Not as fast?
Well, you said those chips are faster that you're adding on the satellite board, right? So it allows,
well, in this case, they're static RAM. So dynamic RAM, which is what the CoCos and everybody else use in the day because they're way cheaper, you have to refresh the RAM. Otherwise, they eventually forget what they're holding. Static RAM keeps it static. It doesn't disappear. You don't have to, it's not discharging. So basically, that whole refresh cycle the computer has to do to keep the RAM remembering things, you have to send this kind of wave through it to get it to, okay, remember all this stuff. And then, you know, so many microseconds later, you do it again. You have to keep doing that. With static RAM, you don't need to do any of that at all. And that's how the Gimme X's 3 megahertz mode works too. You need a static RAM upgrade on there. And then the 1/3 of the CPU or 1/3 of the time that would have normally been doing a refresh is now dedicated to running actual code again. And that's how you get that 1/3 speed increase going from 2 megahertz to 3 megahertz.
But you never answered my question.
Well, there's no difference for running it normally, like just plugging this in and running it. It's no difference in speed whatsoever. It runs the same.
Right.
But if you have a SAM doubler or want to get one, you have to have static RAM and a CoCo VGA, as David mentions.
But doesn't that mean you have to have all your 64K static RAM?
Yes.
But in this case, you would still have 16K on the motherboard, right?
No,
you take off the 16.
What? No way. Nobody said that.
Yeah, no, it's that's standard on all the, like if you're replacing a 16K with 64K, no matter what CoCo you're on, you have to pull the old chips out.
Okay.
Same as a CoCo 3, like you have to pull the 120 out to put the 512 in.
Because this has 2 rails that you plug it into, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And are the RAM chips that are 16K underneath that, or near it, or
Yeah,
are they
they're in
a
between
different place?
they're in between the rails.
Oh, okay.
And you take them out. Yeah.
All right. See, no one said that.
And didn't this board have like 3 ways you could change the chips? You could put in the satellite board. There was a couple of things you could do to.
Yeah, they were trying to cover all the bases on because of the RAM shortage that was happening at the time, and nobody knew which way it was going to go or how fast it was going to recover.
There's a good picture of it there.
There's a picture there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's your 2 rails right there. And I
And
think
those
these are the
they-
4464s.
Are they
Yes.
socketed?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you put those straight into a CoCo 3.
Yeah, that's half of a 128K CoCo 3, literally.
Yeah.
So you can swap those chips back and forth. If you have a CoCo 2B, I think this is, that has all these options that we're talking about, then those chips you can swap between a CoCo 3 128K either direction. I mean, if you blew some chips on your CoCo 3 and you want to put them back in, you can just pull them off here. But most people, if they had a CoCo 3, they would just sell the 4464s because basically it's 2 64K RAM upgrades for a later model CoCo 2. I think Pedro goes into more detail on some of this stuff too, but definitely ask him on Discord too, because he knows all the specs on this, or ask Rick or some of the other hardware guys here.
So let me ask you this question. Was 64K CoCo 2 sold with a board already installed and the RAM not even there underneath it?
I think very
don't know.
few, because the ones later they had another board that came out with that actually had a spot on board for the 64x1s during that time period.
Yeah, and the 2 CoCo 2Bs I have that have the satellite board connector, they came as 64K, but they have the 2 64K by 4 chips.
Yeah,
So-
the 4464s.
Yeah, I think the preference was to use the 64x4s because that was cheaper. Because otherwise, you had to build the extended circuit board, and that was extra cost.
And that had to hold 8 chips.
Yeah. So it's like they used it if they absolutely had to, but they certainly preferred just the 2-chip method.
Yeah, and that was once again. This was what 80. I can't remember what year this was.
Were these American ones? Or
no, these were
Japanese,
Korean?
I think, or Korean
Yeah,
or something. Yeah,
Korean
well,
ones.
there was a factory, and this affected the whole PC industry, not just the CoCo. This affected PCs and everybody else. There was a factory manufacturing a lot of the RAM at the time that actually had a huge fire, and so it was offline for months. And there was a chip RAM shortage everywhere, and RAM prices shot through the roof. That's when Chris Burke introduced the 1/4 meg, where he was selling 256K upgrade boards because he could get half the chips for about the same prices they had costed for the whole 512K upgrade literally 2 months before. But a lot of software that says requires 512K really only needed 256K. So that was kind of like a stopgap measure to get the industry and the CoCo industry in particular through. Like if you wanted to run King's Quest 3 or Rogue and graphics or any of that kind of stuff, it said 512K required. You could get away with 256K and they would run. And that was kind of a stopgap issue, which was only lasted maybe 8 months to a year. And then, the RAM came back online and the shortage went away, and then people just started upgrading like normal.
So was this the potting plastic fire where it didn't matter what RAM manufacturer you talked to, they couldn't get the plastic either, so no chips from us?
I honestly don't remember. I remember Rainbow actually mentioned it, and so did like PC Magazine and a bunch of others, because like I said, it was an industry-wide thing. It wasn't Tandy or Radio Shack or CoCo specific. It was
Yeah.
everywhere.
Here comes Mark saying, yeah, with the chip plastic plant. So you had multiple RAM suppliers. You thought you were double sourced and everything, but none of them could get the plastic because they were all single source.
Mark Siegel said, yes, it was the chip plastic that burned.
Good stuff.
And you were saying, Mark B, you had?
I was just trying to point out Mark's chat.
Yeah, and Mark would have been working directly with, ordering that kind of stuff at Tandy at the time, so he would probably know much better than I would. I just remember it was a huge deal industry-wide. Like RAM prices doubled overnight. It was terrible. It's kind of like the chip shortage we have now. Now, a bit of sad news. And this was posted in our Discord by Peter Stark Jr., his son, who's actually been in our community for a couple of years now, active. But Peter Stark, the guy behind Star Kits. Now, this is a software company that he did that actually existed before the CoCo did. They actually did stuff at 6 to 800 series and 6809 general computers, not just the CoCo. But he started advertising the CoCo magazines and ported Spell and Fix, probably his most famous product, and a bunch of other things to the CoCo. Passed away at the age of 84. And I mean, Peter, unfortunately, has lost his mother and his father both in the last year, which is just terrible. But for those of you not familiar with Star Kits, this was probably one of the most moral of software companies I've seen. Like at the beginning when he started advertising, I'll show you one of his first ads here. This is from July 1982 Rainbow. So here's where he's got Spell and Fix, which just got ported from some of the other 6800 and 6809 systems because they had it for the SWTPC and the gimmicks and Smoke Signal Chieftain and a bunch of others here too. And there's Flex versions, and there was OS, I think it was OS 9 versions and disk basic versions of it. Humbug, which is a color computer monitor. So this is one of his first ads in Rainbow when he first started getting into the CoCo market. And a later ad here is when he started doing these chats, which at first he called a word from the sponsor. Now, normally you'd see some editorial thing, right? Like somebody hyping how great their products are, which, I mean, occasionally he did do, I will admit. But he tried to make this part of his ads useful. Like he'd have program snippets or he'd explain how to do something in BASIC or something like that. Like it was a tutorial. So instead of just hyping his own stuff all the time, he actually literally took half of his ad and made it a little educational thing. And then he had a contest to see what we want to call this because he thought word from your sponsor is kind of boring. And now, like in this particular one, his first column here that he did this, and he goes and explains about print number. He said the basic man explains that print outputs to the screen. Print number -2 is for the printer. Print number -1 is to cassette. And he said what it doesn't say is that print number 0 outputs to the TV screen just as well. So you can actually just make a variable that will contain 0, 1, or 2, and then you can write to all three with the exact same program. So you can actually ask the user, do you want to write this to the screen? Do you want to print it? Or do you want to write it to a cassette file? And then he gives a little bit of sample code. And that was the kind of stuff he published in here, tips and tricks that have absolutely nothing to do with his products whatsoever. And I thought that was really cool. And he's one of the very few people that ever did this in any computer that I know of. They would take up, I mean, ads were not cheap. And he took up half of his ad space just to help the user that had nothing to do with selling his stuff. None of this stuff, which is just awesome. And it's one of the reasons I do remember Star Kits quite a bit from the day. And this is the first one after he had a little contest, and I can't remember what he gave away. I think he mentions it in here, but he wanted to name this column, and the person that won that was Star Kibitz, which I thought was a cute name. So he mentions here is at the Color Computer Show in Chicago, which is Rainbow Fest, of course. And had the show, they raffled away a TV set, which is just odd. And now this is one of the ones where he does do a little bit of plugging about some of his products and stuff here too. But this continued on for a long time, and fairly unique in the computer industry that you would actually, take half of the hundreds of dollars that you're spending to have an ad, a full page ad in a magazine. And he didn't just advertise in Rainbow; he advertised in the other CoCo magazines as well, and just devoting it to the user, no cost. Like here's some tips and tricks, programming tips. General computer tips and all kinds of stuff. So my hat's off to Peter for starting that. And unfortunately, not a lot of people, kind of followed suit with that. It would have been really cool if they had. And thanks to Peter Jr. for letting us know that his dad had passed away. He's been in the industry. I think he started Star Kits in '79, and he went through like until the mid to late '80s. Publishing stuff with the CoCo and gimmicks and everything else. So, okay, next up is the barrage of basic stuff from Alan Huffman. He's, as I mentioned, the last couple of shows here, he pre-planned like 30 days worth of Septandy blogs, and they just keep coming. So this week he's published Define Function for Fun and Profit, the DEF-FN. And as he mentions here, this is a command you kind of read in the manual when you're a kid and you're going, I don't understand what the hell this is talking about. And then you go on to learn how to do P mode 4. And that was me too. I looked at it and didn't quite understand it at the time and never really used it for anything. But basically it lets you define a function based on the input from a single variable. And as Alan experiments and he goes through and actually charts some of these, it's actually a fair bit slower than doing it raw. But it will save you space in your program. If you're calling a certain function a lot, you can define the function once and then you just do fn, the name of the function and the value you're passing to it. And you can put sine, cosine, all kinds of stuff in there. And if you do that type of thing, like a bit more of a complicated function, then it actually will save space in your program if you're calling this quite often. So at the cost of a little bit of speed, you have more space available for your program in those particular cases. And he kind of goes through that, down below here as he goes through the different timings, etc. So this is another one of those things. It's just like Microsoft Basic, where you have speed versus size. And Microsoft Basic itself, that was a programming language that actually followed under the same restrictions. They crammed a lot of code into the 8K ROM and the 16K ROM for Extended Basic that they could have optimized to be faster if they had, expanded it and memory wasn't such an issue. But back in those days, I mean, bumping a ROM from 8K to 16K or having to add a second ROM or whatever was a fairly expensive endeavor to go through. So, the toss-up was, what do? Do you concentrate more on the speed, in which case you're using more room, which means the programs are smaller or it's more expensive, or do you go for the really compact code that fits, and that's even a thing with microcontrollers and stuff today, where you have to maybe cram it into a very small space. So it's a pretty good article, and actually, kind of really teaches how the FN function works, which, back in the day, I had no idea. I saw programs that used it, didn't really understand it. So,
when you first start programming in BASIC back in the day, you think that there's only one way to do it, especially if you're typing from a book or these different, teachings, areas that do different functions. And you think that that's it. And that, you just plug in these things and make a program work. But then later on, you learn that there's shortcuts that people are sharing that do the same thing, but it's not documented that way in the book. And then you think, well, how the heck am I going to remember anything like that? It's not
I have an answer for you on that, Ron. Go to Alan's blog. He's got years worth of these articles doing exactly that. But you're right. I mean, most manuals would try to explain, they're trying to explain the keywords and the functions and commands so that it would show you how it works. And they'd pick a certain subject to apply it to. And that would be how it's shown to be done. But you're right. There's many ways to skin the cat type thing.
The secret is that there's faster ways to do it, but this will get you going.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a sake of readability. Like maybe this slower version is much easier to look at a glance and understand, especially if you're just beginning programming.
Right.
Versus you can do some convoluted mess that, it runs 40 cycles faster type thing, but you have to really look at it and squint your eye to figure out what exactly the hell is this doing? And that applies to semi-language and C too. I mean, any programming language, there's a lot of these types of tricks that you can do that, if speed's of the utmost importance is worth the extra time to learn and do. But if you're trying to make code that's readable and easily upgraded to something else, you want to add a feature later on a year down the line when you've kind of forgotten what you did, that it's easier just to look at it, very simple code that's a little bit slower, but you instantly understand it. Oh, I can insert this new function here type thing. So once again, the toss up between speed and readability in this case, instead of size.
It's like that actually in when I was painting signs for a living, because there's certain things you have to learn in order to make a sign, and there are shortcuts you can take to make it go faster and do the same job. But it's interesting. You don't learn it when you start out. You learn it with
the easier to learn but slower way or whatever. Yeah. Then after this, now this is the one where even Alan himself admits he's gone down a rabbit hole, and it's up to part 5, and it's not done yet. And it's drawing a maze in the CoCo. In this case, he's picking a Pac-Man style maze. And I'll just quickly click through them here. It's all the same thing, and he's trying different ideas. So what he wants to do is compress having a maze in a basic program to take less room, because at first he goes through and does it with X's. So he makes data statements, and then he's got some routines to interpret the X's, change it to a color so it looks more like, a colored maze type thing, hollow out the squares, etc. But it's a whole bunch of these data statements, and every one of these X's takes a full byte. And since it's a one color maze, he wants to compress that down. And you can see the size of the maze here, how much the data statements are taking up to draw just the standard Pac-Man maze. So then he wants to start compressing it down and dealing with hex and see if that maybe shrinks stuff down, and actually it doesn't, and on and on. So then he goes, okay, well, let's continue on here. So part 2, he's figuring out common block types here that because of the semi-graphics on the CoCo actually can define multiple pixels in one byte, because it's basically a 2x2 grid, and then there's an offset for the color. So this one, he goes a bit more into the compression here of getting these block shapes compressed down instead of just the single X type thing, to get these kind of rounded corners and stuff here, because like every 2x2 pixels is a single byte value rather than the X, which is taking one block for one byte. And kind of goes through his explorations in here. And he actually got it all working. It's a pretty big program to do all this, but he said it's dog slow. That was his one big beef. So the whole process took over 40 seconds to draw, trying to interpret that. And he said even with double speed, it still takes a fair bit of time. So, okay, let's try something else. So on part 3, he's now trying to compress it even further. So he's trying to represent it by bits instead of ASCII characters or hex. So this is using a single bit to designate a block on or off, which is really compressing it quite well. So he goes through and does all that, working on the conversion for that. He ends up using a routine using hex with fixed length 2 characters per byte. Because normally if you do a hex string, if the value's 15 or less, it'll only give you a 1 character value, and you want something more consistent. So he has to pad the leading 0 in certain cases. And here he kind of goes through, doing bit patterns and how they show up, adding the bits together. It's just simple binary if you've done that before. Goes through a little tricky fun with the emit string here with the replacements, converting hex, etc. here. Then in part 4, he converts the original ASCII map data to the compressed hex-based version and creates deadlines for those so you can merge them into another program. So we saw it was like multiple screens of these data statements to represent the Pac-Man maze using the X's. He has this program here that reads through and converts all this down. So when it does its conversion down, this is what that entire set of X's now compresses to. So it saves a ton of program space. And the program actually has the option to save as an ASCII file this chunk, so you can actually load it in and merge it with whatever actual program you want to run. So this is a little utility he wrote to do this. So now he's got it compressed to like really small. It's not taking much RAM at all. So you have more room for your game or whatever you're working on that requires this type of data. So now he goes on to 5 and starts trying to convert these bit flagged hexadecimal data statements back to the graphics, which he goes through and he figures out how to expand it properly and get it to draw and everything else. And by the time he's completely done here, and now like the code to decode, it's getting as big as the stuff he had the data statements for. So I don't know if at this point it's actually a loss. We'll have to see how long goes the next one. But to do all the decompression here, 155 seconds to draw the screen, like 2.5 minutes. So if you're playing his little basic Pac-Man game and you got onto the maze, you have to wait 2.5 minutes for it to draw the maze because it's trying to decompress in basic. And he goes, I think I'll have to use assembly for this. So his hinted at part 6, it looks like he's going to write an assembly language routine to do the interpretation of the graphics in this compressed format and then dump them to the screen. And that'll be way, way faster because it's just way easier to do that kind of thing in assembly anyway. You can manipulate bits and shift them out very easily, where in basic you have to do like math and anding and dividing and all kinds of stuff because there's no shift command. So you're doing a real floating point divide to like get a bit out of it, which takes thousands of cycles versus, an assembly language instruction can do it in 2. So I'm imagining there'll be a very major speed increase on this next part. By the way, thanks to Alan. He's been delving into a lot of this basic stuff and he's done it the last couple of Septandies. And he always finds some neat tricks, or he, in some cases like this, goes down a rabbit hole where he spends days trying an experiment, finds out it's actually worse than what he started with and he's trying to fix in the first place. So like color computer programming, it's kind of a learn as you go, and you get to see Alan's thought processes and he kind of explains what he's thinking, what he's trying to do, and then what the result was, which isn't always good.
Do you think Alan has nightmares?
About what?
Numbers.
Being attacked by hex digits or something, maybe?
Yeah. Character strings.
So I wonder if he considered RLE.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah, because when you was showing the maze, I'm thinking, that would probably be good for like RLE, or maybe even maybe even a byte for direction of the maze, like your RLE one direction, then if you turn right, another byte or bit value to say you're turning right or left or something to compress the directions.
Yeah, I mean, even standard RLE, we just say, repeat this byte pattern 30 times.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of black spaces in here. I mean, it would even work for these little chunks in
What's
here.
RLE stand for?
Run length encoding.
Okay.
So that's a very simple compression technique. And if you have data that changes a lot as you go across the horizontal line, it actually will make the file bigger. You have to kind of use it when it's appropriate. In this case here, basically what RLE does is basically it has a little flag that says, am I just going to draw a single character this next byte, or am I going to draw a sequence of that same character multiple times? So in this case here, like the first 2x2 block, it has this little black bit out of the corner. So that would be a single byte. So it would say not compressed, would be the first byte would be some value, say 0 says not compressed. And the next value would be whatever the heck our character code is for this particular little chunk.
So anything repeated is condensed.
Yeah. So the next one would say repeat 30 times. So instead of having a 0 saying it's just not a repeat, you're just going to print the byte raw, you'd say you have 30 comma character string, whatever this full blue is. And it would actually draw, I guess there's one over here. So maybe 20 or something, or 15 or 14 or whatever it is. And it would just say, draw it 14 times, which you can do pretty fast in BASIC. So
Well,
yeah, I agree. RLE would probably work much better on this.
How do you know what position to have it start count?
Well, you always start in the upper left. Well, I mean, if you want to write some custom version, you can, but you usually start in the upper left and you just go. Now, if you have stuff that's very vertically oriented, like some of the chunks down here, you're not going to compress that much because it's usually like this byte's different than the next one is different than the next one. So you're taking 2 bytes, one to say, is this next chunk compressed or not? And then the actual value. When doing it just raw would only take 1 byte. So actually for this little chunk here, it'd actually be longer. But
So
you've
you're
got so many
looking at it as a scan down.
Yes.
And going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in this case here, you'd save a ton on that. You'd save a ton on this black part in the middle because this chunk here and this chunk here would all get compressed into 2 bytes basically. And this chunk down here and this little chunk here and here. So you'd have to kind of like figure it out. And like I said, you can do directional, you can even do vertical RLE, like you can actually do it or have something specifying a direction. I mean, since you've got a flag byte that's basically just saying I'm repeating or I'm not, you can add some bits in there. Like let's say if I got a value of 3, it means go vertical or, whatever else type thing, like David was mentioning. So there's some other techniques if you want to get a bit more advanced that you can do. But this was the way, like, if you remember the old CompuServe P mode 4 graphics that they used to save, I can't remember, but they were actually called them RLE because that's exactly what it was doing.
That's what I was about to mention. And even some of the PCX graphic images also used RLE in the background, but for each of the colors, there was a separate, each color was stored that way.
All right, Let me ask you this. Do you think they're doing this on the machines that make, the CoCo case or whatever, where, if you're doing a lot of repeating, you can just, when they send the code over to the printer, does it do the same kind of thought where?
Are you talking about the G code that's used on 3D printers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically, it says you're going this distance, these number of steps.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is.
Wow.
Well, the other thing is also looking at that screenshot you got there. There's the two halves are a mirror image. So you
so you can even compress it once and just have it know that I'm going to print this one first and this one I'm going to print backwards. Yeah.
So you can halve it then, yeah.
I'm going to be a programmer.
Yeah, you're thinking along the right lines there, Ron. Now, modern compression, like if you're getting into zip and stuff, is much, much more complex where you're dealing with channel fan trees and all kinds of fancy stuff. So, and that's bit level compression with repeating backwards buffer pattern. I won't get into the details here, but basically it's a lot more sophisticated, but it's much more program intensive and much slower. So, I mean, the 155 seconds that it's taken Alan to do this would be far worse if we tried to implement, say, zip in BASIC. That'd probably take like hours to draw this.
Well, it's neat that he went as far to show that instead of giving up.
Well, he's kind of like you said, he thinks this is a good idea. I'll try that, and then he goes through it and he gets it working, and then he discovers it's so slow. It's like, nope, I wasted my time. It was faster before I even started this. So then he goes off into another tangent. Yeah, he shows the mistakes. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like his blogs. Not a mistake, really. It's more of like he shows what he's learning, and that's what color computer programming does too. So those two channels, like I said, are really good for a raw tutorial of learning BASIC as you go, and you get to see the mistakes of the same type of mistakes I remember making myself. Still do.
So Nick, Nick, so when you're programming a game now, your thoughts about doing the processing, making the game, has it changed over the years from when you did like Donut Dilemma, or
Oh, nothing changes in my head, but
you know what I mean?
not really. Yeah,
Don't you have some shortcuts?
Pretty well. You develop that sort of stuff as you go over time. But the majority of my routines are still pretty much the same as what I used to always do.
Yeah, you kind of have built up a library, not quite a library in your case, but a library-like set of routines that you tweak, but you don't rewrite everything.
Yeah.
Scratch everything.
Some things.
So Nick, if you took like 2 years off and came back and started programming again, you could do it?
Well, I'm sort of doing that now, actually.
Yeah, it's like riding a bike. Like if you haven't done it in a while, you're a bit rusty when you first start, but unlike learning it the first time, you pick it up pretty quick.
Okay.
That's what I found. It's like I kind of got out of CoCo programming for 10 years too. And I mean, Nick took a bit of a break, I think, after Gatecrasher before he came back, and kind of the same thing. I mean, you go, I remember this, and then you kind of go straight ahead type thing.
Okay, moving on.
just a quick one. Also, one thing to do is, depending on how much details on the image, it may be easier just to save the background as a separate file on the disk that you just load.
Yeah.
So depends on your image. It might just be quicker and easier just to draw it up, because if you need to change it, you can just change that main image, and the code is not changed at all. You don't have to spend time to redo the code.
Yeah, and that's where you get into that speed versus size thing again.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to write a game in 4K, you probably want to do something like this.
So it's like it's like cheating.
Yeah, you look for the cheat. Yeah, there's always a way to cheat some way, so you got to look for it depending on the situation.
And everybody likes your game because you cheated well.
Yeah, I cheat a lot.
Yeah. If you ever seen him on the Game On Challenge and his Photoshop skills, you know how much Nick cheats.
My scores are cheated.
Anyway, I think I get it on here, so I'm getting ready to hear some people are here. So next one here, and I haven't checked the VCC group actually too often on Facebook lately, but Michael Evanson, I'm not sure I pronounced his last name, so my apologies. But he's released a floppy maintenance program from Windows that can handle OS9, Flex, Uniflex, and Minix, which I'm not super familiar. That's just a mini Unix, isn't it? But I wasn't aware that was. Is that something that the CoCo's used before? I don't recall it. File formats, as he points out here. I just finished implementing the functionality to copy an entire directory structure from your Windows PC to your OS9 floppy images using GoTech compatible only. I download to go to, and you can go to his site to download it, which I'll show in just a sec. Free. It's not a demo. It's fully working at this point. And having the ability to copy an entire directory at one shot is actually something Image Tool and what's the other one that everybody uses? The OS9.exe program do not have that capability. You have to copy the files one at a time. So you have to go through like a script or compress them first and then uncompress them once you put them on OS9, which is what I've been doing. So actually, this actually looks pretty promising. Unfortunately, it's just for Windows at this point. I don't know if he has any plans to expand that onto Linux or OS 10 or something later, but that looks pretty cool. I haven't had a chance to try it yet. I don't know if anybody else saw this and has had a chance to try it either, but it might be a pretty cool little utility to grab. And if you want to get it, you can go here.
Does that mean you can take an RS-DOS?
He doesn't mention RS-DOS in here. That's the one thing I noticed. It's OS9, Flex, Uniflex, and Minix only at this point. So now, given that this is his page you go download from, I can understand why. SWTPC was a manufacturer of 6800 and 6809 machines back in the late 70s, early 80s. So obviously he's got a bias towards that type of thing, and that ran Flex, and the later versions of it ran OS9. And this is all before the CoCo did any of that. So he's been involved with the 6800X chips and stuff from before the CoCo, and that's what he's kind of doing. He talks about the SWTPC emulators and stuff here. He mentions that 6800 and 6809, Flex OS9 and Uniflex, etc. So he seems to have been in the industry for quite a while, or at least his interest is in the industry, pre-CoCo. So this would have been like, I think, when did the 6800 come out? 74 or something? 75, somewhere in there? I can't remember the year, but 75, I think. He's obviously been involved with it for quite a while, and he's dealing with, the SWTPC, which predates Tandy's that's around the video text time or the agrivision time span, if
Yeah.
not before. So anyway, it's a free download. You can feel free to get it. He's got some other utilities here too if you want to fiddle with some other things that he's done. He's got a generic 680X assembler that apparently does 6800 and 6809. He's got terminal emulators for televideos and some Unix sources that obviously he's been converting over. Floppy maintenance utility for Linux, complete setup, etc. So all free downloads. Give them a shot. Some of you hardcore tech heads in the audience there, either on the panel or in the chat, I'd love to one of you to give this a shot and then get back to us to see how it works, and report back. Next up, we have Joe's Computer Museum. This is a live stream that they just did last night, and he's actually upgrading a CoCo 3 to a 6309. And it worked first try. And he actually had gotten multiple 609s from two different vendors. So he actually goes through and swaps the chips in out because there's been some reports I've seen on Facebook and elsewhere that some people were not selling real 639s. They were just remarked that way. And, you get the chip and either it doesn't work or it's totally different or it's a 6809 with the tops, printing on it scraped off so you can't tell, etc. I think he went through 4 or 5 of them here and every single one of them worked fine. And then I was actually on the chat on the live stream for a bit. So I suggested some programs to run to show it off. He was planning on showing off ease of use actually, but he only has 128K. And ease of use, one of the reasons it's ease of use is because of the GUI, and that definitely takes more than the 120K CoCo. So he booted up Nitrous 9 itself, and it's just a text prompt shell. That's all you can really do, so it doesn't really show it off.
But would it work on 256K?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. So at any rate, the upgrade was successful. I did point out Xeneon is a game that has been optimized for 609, so he did play that for a bit, and he actually played the 609 version afterwards to kind of compare the speed difference. And then there's a couple other 609 things, I think, like Russian Assault he tried just to kind of get a feel for it. But now he's actually looking at getting an upgrade. I think he was actually contacting Cloud9 about getting the Triad or the Triad Plus for 512 or a 2 meg. And Mark Marlette, if you're listening to this, please put on your website that your Triad Plus is actually available. The product's been out for 4 or 5 years now, and it's still not on the website. So everybody I tell to go to Cloud9 to order a 2 meg upgrade until we get some other, out there in bulk that we can actually buy. If you go to your site, it doesn't look like it exists at all. Just add a little note on the Triad page saying there's a 2 meg version available as well or something, because there's so many people that go there and go up. I don't see it. I guess you're wrong, Curtis. It doesn't exist anymore, and it does. You can still buy it. He was selling them at CoCo Fest. So please update your website. And Mark Overholzer, I was going to ask you, has there been any further word on your version? Like you were going to start reproducing the Boomerang Plus?
Yeah, I have some in process, but I'm waiting for them to be assembled completely. So yeah, it's been a long time, but I have parts and pieces and they're being put together.
You have an estimated time frame, or is it still too early to tell?
Not at the moment. I'm hoping to get an update here shortly. So
okay. Because I think Frank mentioned that he's kind of thinking of working on one too, or maybe has been working on one. I'm not sure. So hopefully we'll have some, alternate suppliers, just like we have CoCo STCs now. And then I've actually talked to Joe a bit, and once he does get an upgrade, whether he gets 512 or he gets a 2 meg or whatever, we're going to get in contact with email, and he'll have some questions for me on ease of use, so I can show that off on the stream as well. So probably won't make Septandy though. Next up, Jim Gary. This is kind of a sequel to an earlier one where he did a Valentine's heart using sine and cosine and a bunch of complicated math to draw it, so that it takes longer and is like super complicated. Here he does the Batman logo, and he does it in the 64 by 48 pixel, which reduces it to, I think, 2 or 4 colors on the MC10. James Different Effers in the chat, he can correct me as to which one that is. So it gives you less color, but slightly higher resolution vertically. So you get square pixels instead of elongated ones, which Nick would like. But you can see here, like it's using like square roots and, multiplication and, exponents and absolute values, all kinds of stuff here to make this as complicated as possible to draw a Batman logo. But it looks pretty cool, so I thought I'd show it anyway. This is where Alan would just use data statements and be like, beep, and it's on. But I don't know, how would you come up with the math to even do this? Like this would be way, I would not take the time to do this at all. This is converted from another programmer, I think, if I remember correctly, but wow.
This is a symmetrical one, so you can just print half of it and just replicate
Yeah.
the other half.
Yeah, which actually he does do if you watch the draw.
I think he does. Yeah, I think he does. Yeah.
Otherwise, it'd be even slower yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so another official Septandy one. This one here is from Jamie's Hack Shack, showing some stuff that he picked up from VCF Midwest. I don't know if any of the people on the panel here that were actually at VCF Midwest, if you guys ran into Jamie, like David Ladd, if you did. Might not be at the computer. There, he picked up a couple of things that actually are of interest here. I won't play the whole thing. He's got some other things he picked up as well, but he picked up a Vectrix, which is, of course, is 6809 based vector-based video game system, which is kind of a cousin of the CoCo, I guess. And he also picked up an MC10. So this is the first time he's qualified officially for Septandy. So let me fast forward a bit here.
And now we begin the Septandy portion of the program. Now I have a confession to make. This is essentially the first Tandy I've had. Again, I know some people hate this one, but I like to tinker with stuff, and I'm going to tinker with this one for a while. Maybe I'll keep it, maybe I won't. Maybe this will be the first step into this whole
he should contact
CoCo world.
Jim Gary,
we'll see here. So when I was a little kid, I had my VIC-20, but my cousins up the road did have a CoCo 2. I confirmed that on Facebook. And I do remember going up there and they had some cartridges, and I believe they may have had a tape deck as well. But that was probably the majority of my Tandy experience. But like most of you, we did have a Radio Shack even in my little small town, and it was one of our favorite places to go mess around back in the
church
sell you a cell phone days.
Of course, your battery club card.
Maybe when they only tried to get you in the battery club, but that's been a long time since then. I think they tried to
I do miss
get
that
that fire
actually.
back going again, like this commercial shows, but I don't think they ever got back to that point.
What?
The 80s called. They want their store back.
And they have a bunch of people from the 80s in that ad. But anyway, he goes through and kind of goes, just kind of talking about the MC10 a little bit there. He hasn't really done much with it yet at this point. But he just wanted to mention that he picked that up. So I'm looking forward to a follow-up video when he actually starts using it to see what he thinks. Next up in the Dragon group, we got a few Dragon stories related here. So Simon McElroy just picked up another Dragon to add to his collection, and there's some additional boards in here, which aren't too common from what I gather. One is the Dragon Data RGB1 board. So that's actually an official Dragon display board, and it's let me read my notes here. Somebody in the comments, because he was asking exactly what this was for, and it looks like the RGB1 is an early CCAM RGB adapter before they integrated that feature on the board for the French versions of the Dragon motherboard. So that's what that was, and that's the little green board over here, which I'll zoom up there. So you can kind of, you can quite make it out here, but it says, by data, Dragon Data. So this is actually officially by them. But it was basically an early version of the CCAM adapter to match the TVs in France at the time. And eventually they just redid the version of the motherboard that had that built in, so you didn't need the satellite board at all. So that one was kind of solved fairly quickly. And then this was kind of like a homebrew one that somebody had put together. And this people in the chat there kind of determined this is probably an internal RS-232 port, because the Dragon 32 had a built-in parallel port, but not a serial port, whereas the Dragon 64 had both. So this kind of would bring your Dragon 32, aside from the RAM, kind of up to Dragon 64 specs and give you an actual RS-232 card, similar to the RS-232 pack on the CoCo, but internally. So it didn't take up your cartridge slot. So that was kind of cool. I mean, to buy one that has two rare boards in it, that was a pretty cool purchase on his behalf. Next up, we have an announcement for another retro show that's taking place. Roy Templeman mentions that the Retrofest in Cambridge. This is the computer museum that they have in Cambridge. And this year we have a record number of exhibitors. So they announced that. And it's November 5th to 6th in Cambridge in the United Kingdom. And this is a cross-platform. It's basically a whole bunch. We've covered some of their stuff before. We've even had people live at the show. Now, I'm trying to remember the dates of the actual Dragon, because it's the 40th anniversary of Dragon, and there's a special Dragon show happening in the home city of where the Dragon Data itself was. Back, they're going to go drive by as part of the show the actual plant where the dragons were manufactured back in the day. Obviously, it's not anymore, but so I can't remember if it conflicts with that because I think it's pretty close to the same time. So people in the UK might be kind of torn as to which show they want to go to. But anyway, their official site right here kind of goes through, and they actually have a list of speakers and the cost to get in. And basically, it's the cost to get in the museum. It's not an extra charge on top of that. You pay the museum entry fee. There's a lot of hands-on displays. You get to play with the actual hardware of all those various kinds live. It's not just look at it behind glass. Obviously, some of the really old rare stuff is behind glass, but it's basically a hands-on event. And they've got a bunch of different exhibitors listed here, including Tony Jewell, Here Be Dragons. So it's Attack of the Clones. Tony will be bringing a selection of his Tier City machines and some less common Tier City clones. Oh, and maybe a dragon, which isn't a clone of anything made by Tandy. Nope. So, I mean, honest, we've talked about this before. Basically, they're both off the original Motorola reference design, so they're not really stealing. And honestly, the Dragon has a way better keyboard. So anyway, if you're in the UK at the beginning of November, that'd be a good show to take in, especially if you're into general retro computing, not just the Dragon and CoCo stuff. You can kind of catch it all in one show. It's kind of like a VCF for the UK. And next up, we have Julian Brown, who's actually redesigning a modern take of the motherboard, kind of like Pedro's done on the CoCo 1, 2, and 3 boards that he's been kind of like making modern representations of that you could print out. So he's basically got the design done for the Dragon 32. But now he's asking, like, should we be doing some changes on here since we, are kind of going to be starting to manufacture these, hopefully, new? Like, is there any things that we need to do that, should have been done or would make things easier? And there's been multiple suggestions coming in. One that's actually been coming up fairly often, which kind of surprised me, is that a lot of people want 2-button joystick support on the Dragon because the DIN connector had the extra pin. You can wire it into the PIA just like the CoCo 3 did. And honestly, you could do this on a CoCo 1 or 2 as well. And because there's some CoCo 1 and 2 software that was designed after the CoCo 3 came out that actually already supports a 2-button joystick, you would actually be able to just run those. Like Russian Assault by Diecom is one. It's a CoCo 1 and 2 game, but it actually has the check. And when you run it, it'll actually ask you, do you have a 2-button joystick? And you can't normally on a CoCo 1 or 2, or on Dragon for that matter. But because it was written with the CoCo 3 in mind, it actually just does the standard, you're reading the PIA to read the second button. Well, if he builds this into this new Dragon board and they start manufacturing it new, then you might have 2-button support built right in. Basic can already read it with a peak, same as it does a 1-button. So your basic programs can support it. Some of the games, like I said, already have the support for the second button. So I think that's a good idea. And there's a bunch of other suggestions, but if you guys have any suggestions you want to make for a reproduction of the motherboard of the Dragon, but with some added features, hit the Dragon 3264 group on Facebook and just comment on his post. And we'll see what all gets integrated into it. He sounds like he's going to do the 2-button for sure. There's a couple of things he's talking about that a few people have mentioned too as well. I won't go through all those. You guys can join in the conversation there. And that's the end of the regular news. And I've just got a few on the game news, and I'm going to have to go. Hopefully the banging downstairs is not coming through on the mic.
We can play it off as a beat.
My other window up, share the screen.
Are they making you some coffee?
Oh, I made coffee way before. I don't live without coffee. That's that. I almost make coffee before I'm awake. Actually, with the timer, sometimes I actually do that. Okay, so for the Game On news, I don't have a ton here. The first one, and I'll just mute. Well, I'll play it a little bit first here. But basically, it's the next episode of the CoCo Show, which is covering Shock Trooper, which is one of my favorite CoCo 1 and 2 games. It's got great graphics. It's got one of the better musical soundtracks. It doesn't sound like the standard organ music. It's actually got some vibrato and stuff in it, so it's a bit more sophisticated. It plays off the VTV show, combining it with some stuff from like Tutankhamun arcade style game with a science fiction twist on it. One of my favorites. I'm assuming most people here played it. We've had it on the Game On channel before. Ooh.
All right, this week we are looking at Shock Trooper.
So anyway, it's a good review of the game. They quite liked it too. Like I said, it's one of my favorites.
What year is this game?
80.
85, the screen.
5, I think. Yeah. It was after Tut's Tomb by the same author, which actually used some of the same engine for the graphics part anyway, which was in 84. So, but yeah, if you remember the old VTV show, it's definitely based on that. It's funny because some of the younger people on the Amigos Discord have never heard of the VTV show. They have no idea what it is. And I mean, for some of us that grew up during that time, that was like a must-watch show almost, I think. It was like an event. It was kind of like Lost was years later type thing.
Indeed, and they even tried to do a remake of it too.
Oh, I never saw that.
It was only one season, which was a bummer.
Was it any good? Like I didn't get a chance to see it.
It was filmed here in Vancouver.
I liked it. But like I said, it only lasted one season. It ended at a point where you was expecting another season and you just never got it.
What's the MD
so many
stand
shows.
for?
What is
Sorry, I got 2 questions there. What?
What's the MD stand for?
Mark Data Products.
Mark Data.
And was Mark Overholzer, you had a question? Comment?
Nope, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
So I just made a comment that, it ended like so many other shows on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, that sucks. I hate that.
At least Continuum ended.
They should at least allow, like, pay for one more episode just to wrap things up. That's what they should be doing.
This game, it always had the problem where the character's floating on air. But he never actually steps down.
Well, he's in a spacesuit with anti-gravity boots. It's obvious, isn't it? But they're weak. They can't take you up too high.
Invisible high heels.
No, they're just white. That's all. He's got a white sole.
They're platform shoes from the 70s.
Yeah, it's his Kiss Army combat boots, type thing.
Spaceman in drag.
It's a really good game, though. I mean, there's a lot of things to do in it. You're rescuing, the other astronauts and stuff, and collecting pieces, just like Tut's Tomb did every 4 screens or whatever it is. And you got some robots you can destroy. Some you can only push with your gun, so you can just ward them off, but you can't kill them. So you kind of force them away from you, so you can get around them, or you force them to go down through that little chute in the bottom.
What's in the wall right there, blinking?
That's a sensor thing, and you have to trip those by walking beside them to unlock parts of the game where you can actually go between the levels, so that you actually have to do that. You don't have to press a button or anything. It's automatic when you walk by, but if you don't, you can't finish the level. Then you got radiation in your suit. Every time you fire and hold down your gun, it takes up more radiation. And if you hold it down too long, it's like a flamethrower. Like you can actually extend it across the screen. You can also turn that inviso thing, but that also sucks your radiation like crazy too. That's even worse than your gun, but it means you can't get hit. And you got these little, I don't know what you call these little machines with the 2 bubbles with the lighting between them. But basically, every time you throw one of those force fields disappears.
They're force field generators.
Yeah. Thank you.
So here's something I'm not familiar with. Is he doing something to force the graphics are really, really nice.
Yeah.
Is he doing something to force the blue into the characters so that you don't get color fringing and you've just got blue and blue?
He's one of the guys like Donkey King did, where he's designed the game both as P Mode 4 regular and P Mode 4 artifacting. Like he does the color's done using the standard, every 2 pixel or 2 bits type thing is a color, quote unquote. But he's also drawn a lot of the graphics to be single pixel, like a raw P Mode 4 if you're running an RGB monitor. And he kind of has really tweaked the graphic drawing to kind of cover both. So he's getting artifact colors, but he's actually getting a full 256 horizontal resolution on most of it at the same time. Whereas most, if you just do a pure artifact, you basically are only getting 128 controllable pixels. And he's kind of combining the 2 techniques.
So the text only errors one way. You don't end up with all of the colors all mixed in with your.
Yeah, as long as you do it on every 2 bits, you can keep the colors consistent. But that takes a bit of designing to actually get the graphics to work properly. Erico's done a few things like this too. He's really good at doing this kind of thing.
But everything works. The little wavy lines in the fat, everything is fixed.
No, it's honestly, for a CoCo 1 and 2 game, this is one of the best present. In fact, Bode even said himself, this is the game that he thinks reminds him the most of the Apple II graphic games using artifact colors, because it doesn't look as blocky. Like some of the ones on the CoCo are basically just, you take P Mode 3 and you just set the VDG to output P Mode 4 and you get 128 by 192 for color. But this is actually treating it partly as a 256 2-color black and white. as well as treating the artifact colors, kind of combining two. Sailor Man does this, Donkey King does this, Shock Trooper, Tutstoom. There's a fair number of games that do, but there's quite a few others that don't. They just treat it as a P1.3 with half the horizontal resolution. And out of the ones that do this sort of combined technique of pure two color as well as artifacting, I think this is one of the most visually impressive ones. He did a really good job designing this one, even better than he did in Tutstoom.
Exactly. He's made good use of the artifact colors. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not an easy game, but once you learn that Invisible thing, that saves your butt a lot. It was fun too. I can't remember who did it, probably Buck Owens, but there was somebody that actually wrapped it during our Game On challenge of it a year or two ago. So once you learn all the tips and tricks and techniques and get pretty good at it, you can actually get pretty far along. I think there's 16 screens if I remember, and then it wraps and gets harder. Anyway, a full review you can get on their show. They've also announced that Interbank Incident's next game. I know Alan Murphy has already submitted his review on their Discord. I don't know if I'm going to have time to do it this week.
Those are Tesla coils.
Yeah, could be.
That's what they are.
Anyway, really good game. Go check it out if you haven't tried it before. Next up, this is a follow-up. So Aaron of Vintage Geek. So he released a Septandi video, the CoCo 3 before, where he's got the RGB monitor and stuff now, and he's kind of booted up and tried a few things. So this one, he actually does some games, and he's actually got 512K installed now. So he does some disc games, and I think he did one cartridge game, and he did stuff that was all from Tandy. So he plays, I think, King's Quest 3. Well, I can just play. I'll play the little intro here, but I'll kind of skim ahead a bit.
In our last video, we talked a lot about the Color Computer 3 in honor of Septandi, and we got to play with some of the peripherals and different functions, but we really didn't have a chance to play any games. So I wanted to take some time today to play some of the games for the Color Computer 3. 128K or 512. Although this game has exciting educational value, you should never attempt to treat yourself or anyone else by relying on the information in this game.
This is a hard game. Has anybody here played Microscopic Mission? And if you have any of you ever saved a patient?
No. I've died in various places.
I've come close, but yeah, I haven't done it either. The hard part is when you have to shut the heart down to get into the heart, and then you have 2 minutes before the patient dies or whatever it is.
Stumble around and die.
So you have to drive perfectly, and then you'll zap whatever you have to fix, and then you have to get out of the heart and start it back up again. That's what usually gets me. I can usually get to where the damage is, but that heart thing really screws me up. So this is one I'd like to see Buck Owens tackle and see if he can win it. And Ken, I don't know if this would make a good one to put in the Game On Challenge or not. What do you think?
I've actually never tried it, but I'll take a look at it.
Do you have to have a 512?
Nope. This one will run on 128K. If you boot it off the raw floppy. No, go ahead. Anyway, he reviews a few games in there, like I mentioned. They're all Tandy games. So he hasn't tried any of the newer third-party or freeware or the stuff that's way more advanced that's been done since. So hopefully he gets a chance to try those too. But he did try some pretty decent ones. I mean, Microscopic Mission's kind of a cool one. It looks really visually impressive. I think he played Shanghai, which he really liked. King's Quest 3, which, I mean, it looks like the Tandy 1000 version. So, I mean, graphically that one matches, if not slightly better. Sound-wise, not quite as good, but he covered a pretty good wide gamut, and he's playing a variety of games, not just arcade games. So next up after that, Mr. Dave 609. So he says his Space Pirate Kimiko, which he has been showed off of. This is one of the Patreon supporters of him. And it's Bapster Arcade. I think he's in the UK. Yeah, he's in the UK. And he reviews a bunch of retro things. So he's, this particular video, he's reviewing some Spectrum stuff and Amiga stuff and Atari 2600 stuff and a bunch of things. And he actually does a very brief review of the game from Dave. So I'll just play that little clip. But if you're interested in general retro, definitely check out the rest of his video as well.
So a while back, I supported a Kickstarter for a game called Space Pirate Kimiko. And this has been made by a Mr. Dave 6309, and it's basically an 8-bit action adventure shooter game. It came on a micro SD card. And this little.
Anyway, I'll let you guys go watch that video there. There's some gameplay footage and stuff there to kind of show what the game is about. And then, of course, you see the little 3D printed rocket that Dave supplied with it as well, which I'd not seen before, which is really cool. And I know Dave's still waiting for some hardware to come out with the sound edition card that he's going to be doing to really hype up the effects on the game. So, and Dave's in the chat, so if you have any questions about the game, feel free to hit him up. Ken, you want to say what you're talking about here? I'll just mute it.
We can't understand you.
So I just did a quick video of 5 games that if you have been away from the color computer or have never tried the color computer, these are my suggestions to take a look at to really make you say, wow, I didn't know that it could do that.
Now you picked all transcode games.
They're all the transcode games, yeah. But I mean, I think those are the most impressive games we have right now. So that's why I did that. Not necessarily my favorite games on the color computer, just the ones that are going to make people go, wow.
Yeah. I mean, there are some really good games that are not transcodes too. Which I would rank up here. But I think the fact that a CoCo 3, an 8-bit machine from 1986, can emulate an arcade game as close as MAME does.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
That's kind of the thing I was going for, to make people be a little more interested in the color computer, maybe grab a few people into the community.
If you go to the beginning there where those circles are going around, that's the Motorola logo upside down.
Yeah. And Williams Electronics that did most of the ones that are transcoded here. There's 609 based arcade games. I mean, that's what they're using internally. Now, before I go on to the next one, I've only got a couple left here, and then I have to go. Ken, there was some talk, like I know Glenn Hewlett, he stopped doing Robotron because he's just kind of getting burned out on it, and he figures he's 95% done or whatever, because he said there's some slowdown glitches that he couldn't fix, etc. You've since discovered from talking to people that actually is probably accurate.
Yeah, and actually at VCF Midwest, I actually talked to some people that were involved in part with the original arcade cabinet, and I would say this game is actually more like 99% done, because they had the same problem with slowdown, and every now and then a couple of the glitches where things don't completely disappear happened on the arcade cabinet too. So
Glenn actually might be literally done.
Yeah. And I mean, this was it was quite an interesting story, talking to a guy about how actually when they released this game, they actually, when they released Robotron, they actually, the arcade cabinet was at the show to be unveiled, and it had no ROM in it, and they were hand coding the ROM and rushing it over and plugging it in just as the curtains were opening to preview it, because they were having trouble with things like the slowdowns and
talk about just in time.
Yep.
That sounds a lot like the original iPhone presentation, because some of the engineers afterwards here were saying like this is being held together by like shoestrings.
Yep.
Like all the stuff had not been run together before. Each little engineering team that did different parts were all going like, this is going to crash, this is going to crash. And I guess some of them had flasks of booze, and every time something worked, they'd take a swig, and they were expecting not to be able to drink that much, but actually a few of them got pretty drunk because they actually did make it through the presentation. So,
the Amiga was the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely say that Robotron is 99% done. I mean, I think the actual game part of it is done pretty much, and it's just the title screen and the high scores and stuff that need to be finished.
Yeah.
Maybe
given that we can encourage Glenn to just finish it, because I know he passed the code off to me, and I haven't had time to even really look at it all that much yet, because I was going to take a stab at it. But I've also got, Petsky and Nitrous 9 version 1 and a bunch of other things I'm trying to get done at the same time. So if he finds out that all the stuff he spent so much time trying to hunt down to fix is actually part of the original game's problem, then maybe he'll have some incentive just to finish the rest, because it looks like he actually did everything right.
Yeah. Because a lot of people have commented on my videos that I've done about it that, all those slowdowns and things happened on the arcade machine too. So
Yeah, and you actually got it from the horse's mouth. You talked to some of the developers yourself. So
well, they weren't developers. These were people that were involved in
the hardware
actually.
side?
Well, they were around with the developers. They had to do with putting the machine together and stuff. They weren't the actual coders and stuff, but
okay, but definitely involved at the time it was coming out.
Yeah.
Type thing.
They would have firsthand knowledge then because they helped assemble it and probably test. So
Yeah. Anyway, good stuff in there. There's a few 609 based games. There's a couple Z/Z80 based games there, like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong, of course, is the one that started the whole transcode movement when Sockmaster did that. And if you go and look at the original video that Sockmaster did when he first released Donkey Kong the CoCo 3, the accusations that he cheated and this was all done in MAME and he's just faking it running on a CoCo in the comments was hilarious. And a few of them actually was Sock said basically, here, download it, try it yourself, put it on a real CoCo. And a few actually, they ate crow. They said, yeah, you're right, this is amazing. And then a few others wouldn't try it because they said it's fake and I don't want to waste my time trying it, and they never did believe it, which is just insane. And next up, we got some two Jim Gary ones. I'll kind of round out the games thing. So the first one here is a port of a 1976 game. So this is early on, called Hexapon, originally written by R.A. Kapke. It's a chess style game used to demonstrate some simple artificial intelligence concepts. And it was originally published in Dave All's Compendium of Basic Programmers. And you guys may remember that name, if I'm pronouncing it right, which I don't even know. But he was the original publisher of Creative Computing Magazine, which is actually the very first computer magazine I ever saw. Anyway, watching chess is like watching paint dry, so I'll just fast forward a little bit here. And it's not quite chess, but basically it's a very, very early AI style computer, learning how to play as it goes. And then the second one he did is actually it's two little programs in one called Time Spiral. The other was called Maze of Doom, written by R. Guardo and Susan Zacher in 1984. Once again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the names here. And these were originally published in a book by Parachute Press called The Marvel Superheroes Computer Fun Book, which is not one I've seen before. Ken, I know you collected some of the old books that used to have tie-ins with computers and type-in listings. Is this one you've ever heard of?
Not one I've heard of, nope.
So the first one, this Time Spiral, is actually not a game. It's more just an effect, a sort of an animated low-res demo type thing. And then the second one is a very simple text-to-adventure style game, but not actually using like keywords like we're used to. It just has like, here's menu options. Do you want to type 1 to go north or 2 to go south or type thing? So I'll just briefly show those. So this is a spiral thing. And I must have tied in with something in the book at some point. I'm not sure what. But basically just a repeating pattern with sometimes with ASCII characters, sometimes with graphics blocks. So anyway, repeat that multiple times. And this is the little Maze of Doom. And it's basically, there's no graphical representation of the maze at all. You just try to walk a direction and you'll have to keep track on paper, like when you hit walls, to figure out how to get out of the maze. So very, very primitive programs. I don't know if everything in that book was like that. I mean, they're not very long to type in. I guess that's probably the one advantage. They're not the greatest games in the world, I'll be bluntly honest. But having a Marvel Comics tie-in, especially considering how huge Marvel is now with the MCU, movie series and TV series and stuff, and you're being on Disney Plus here. I mean, this is the start of their getting involved with the computer revolution in the early 80s, and it's they've come a long way. This is pretty sad. All right, that's all I have this week. I'm expecting a flurry of Septandy stuff to come in the next week, since Septandy's cutoff is midnight Friday night, right before we go on the air the following morning, or afternoon, depending on your time zone. And I have to go. So thanks for putting up with my snoozy newsy, and hopefully all of you got a really nice rest. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Later, Curtis.
Yep. Bye. See you guys later. I'll see if I can. I'll pop in and watch it later if I can, but if not, I'll catch it on the rerun.
And you can laugh at us later.
All right. Well, what do you say we take a commercial break?
Yes.
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 You are watching CoCoTALK, the world's leading weekly video podcast, featuring the Tandy Color computer. We spread the love to the past, present, and future for all models, including the original color computer, the CoCo 3, and the world-renowned exclusive French Canadian CoCo 2. The Radio Shack.
CoCoTALK would like to thank the patrons who sponsor our program, so our heartfelt gratitude goes out to Alan Huffman, Alan Murphy, Blair Ledoux, Boat and Aaron, Brendan Donahue, Brian Weasler, Brian Walsh, Karen Anscombe, D. Bruce Moore, Daddy Burrito, Daniel Williams, Diego, Eric Canales, Glenn Hewlett, Graham Vebke, Grant B., Grant Leedy, Henry Strickland, Jason Downs, J Style, Ken Reichert, Malfunct, Melly, Michael Pitsley, Mike Rayburn, OG Hugo, Paul Fiscarelli, Paul Shoemaker, Paul Thayer, Retro Tech Time, Rick Hewlin, Rob Inman, Rocky Hill, Stephen Wagner, Steve Batson, Steve Rasmussen, Terry Steen, Terry Steggy, The Backyard Shed Gang, Tim Thayer, Tom C., Tom Gunderson, Tom Heron, Tom S., Tony C., and William Athing. Thank you ever so much, patrons.
It's time for everyone's favorite segment, Who's New to Discord This Week?
Gav says, "Hi, I'm Ryan. I've been into retro computers for many years and am part of Randy Kindig's Indie Area Club. I've listened to the show for a while but have little personal experience with CoCos. I bought the blue tape CoCo 3 at VCF MW last week and hope to learn more and get help with it through the community. Thanks." Cheshire Noir says, "Hi everyone. West Australian retro collector here. Got my first CoCo, a PAL CoCo 2 about 5 weeks ago. Got most of the missing chips for it on the weekend. Just discovered I'm still missing a single chip, which I've ordered. Long-term plans is to do either an S-video or a YUV mod to it. Got here from the Facebook group. My personal blog on my retro collecting is at www.ilike8bits.com, although I need to update it a bit. I mostly collect 8 and 16-bit systems." Kiva says, "Hi, my name is Lynn. So I am a programmer, and I first got introduced to Tandies via a YouTuber, LGR, Lazy Game Reviews. In the process of making an MUD, a multi-user dungeon, and I thought it would be neat to play it on an older computer. I mentioned older computers to my dad, and he said he had a CoCo 2, so I recently purchased one. It hasn't arrived yet, so I have just been playing around with an emulator and having fun typing up programs. So that's how I discovered the CoCo 2. Half Elf says, "Hey there. I'm James Stoneburner, and I've been involved with retro computers since they weren't retro, as I had a CoCo 2 when I was a kid. I've always been deeply invested in Tandy Radio Shack stuff, since my dad was a repair manager for them for almost 30 years, back when they had repair centers. I'm an embedded engineer who does hardware, firmware, and software. I currently have a CoCo 2, performing full rebuild and restoration, a VIC-20, and an Atari 800, amongst other retro computers. I'm mainly looking to connect with other fellow retro computer nerds." Z Dane says, "Hi, I'm David, and I'm a long-absent CoCo enthusiast, poking my nose back in to see what's going on. I grew up with a 64K CoCo 2. As an adult, I got myself a CoCo 3 with 512K, disc, monitor and went to town. Assembly was fun, and I got quite a few interesting things working, but never quite finished anything. I like playing with 6x09 assembly, and wouldn't mind getting back involved in things. Might as well see where the tool chain is at nowadays. I also have a friend who's interested in working with hardware, so we'll see what happens." Super Genji says, "Good evening all. Jason here, I go by Super Genji. I've been a computer enthusiast my whole life, starting with an NEC multi-speed 286 laptop I got from my uncle in middle school that I used to dial up BBSs and play door games. However, some of my best memories are playing Double Back and Don Pan on a CoCo 2 I received in the 90s from the same uncle. I loved going to the bookstore as a kid and buying Program Your Own Game books that listed code for BASIC back in the day. The previous bios were edited for time, thanks to Grandaldian, Boys in Tech, Paul Fiscarelli, Paul Shoemaker, Nightbeard, Glenside Computer Club and the CoCoTALK patrons for boosting the server. Please consider joining Discord and visiting the welcome section to read these bios in full and see what the community has to offer. Just go to discord.cocotalk.live.
See y'all on Discord. Coming this October to the CoCoTALK Game On Challenge. 1, 2, robots coming for you. 3, 4, they enter through the door. 5, 6, hear their ominous clicks. 7, 8, it's a terrible fate. 9, 10, here's a nightmare again.
Okay. That was interesting. Okay, project updates and acquisitions. Let's see. First up, Brian, I think you've got something.
Yeah, I got
It's a 3-hour show.
I'm going to save the thing for David Ladd there towards the end here, so you have to bear with me here. So, I've been a while since I've been on. I have a few things I'd like to kind of share. People might find kind of interesting.
Comes a 6-hour show.
Here comes a 6-hour show. David Bell was made this available, and no one seemed to be too interested on it. So I reached out to him and picked it up. This JMN controller. It's in really nice shape. It's very clean. It right now it just has RS DOS in it. So, but it does have the open port, and it does have the switch in there. So, if you were to put another type of DOS on it, you could boot up to it. So, yeah, it was nice clean one.
Has a parallel port on it?
Does it have? Yes, it does.
Okay, on the side.
Oh, that's the good one. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Good thing Jason's not here. He's not going to get here for that toggle switch.
All right. And then from a award-winning company out there called Computer Connect, I got myself a NIC card there, ones that Mr. Rick Euland is making. So,
cool.
So I look forward to playing with that. So, and he includes some really nice documentation with things that explain there. So, yeah, good job, Rick. Look forward to playing with it. The award winning was right, wasn't it? Was that part right?
Well, you have to make one up, but
okay. in the mail. And then something I actually kind of forgot about, and then all of a sudden this showed up in the mail. I ordered this almost a year ago, but because of parts, I ordered some things from Retro Innovations, and finally got my my CoCo Flash. I wanted to get one of those. I've always wanted to kind of play with it, so got that. And then something you guys might have seen me post on Facebook, trying to do some education on it a little bit there, because it's ham radio is something I've always kind of been interested in, but never really got into. I have some friends that are, but this was in with a lot that I picked up. It's called HamSoft, and from what I understand, this little connector here, it was made by a company called, it's not Kentronics, it's Cantronics. And there was a interface called the Cantronics interface, and this would plug into the back of it there. And then this would, through the software, then it was menu driven off of this ROM, from what I understand, will allow you to go out of the ham radio and communicate. So I'm keeping my eyes open for a Kentronics interface. I've put a couple inquiries out there and looking for one, but we'll see. I might be able to do a demo of this thing or sometime.
Cool. Will it do WeFax?
I don't know if it's going to do WeFax or not.
Everybody drink.
And then something I've wanted to play with a little bit here, because we always see the posts on Facebook about folks trying to get good video quality out of their CoCos. When they have a CoCo 2 and all they have is the RF jack on the back. And we always give them little tips and pointers, of using a coax cable and things. And something that's been around for a while is people will take the output and go into a VCR, and then take the composite out from there and connect that into a monitor. And I came across a video. This isn't anything new, but I've just wanted to try it out myself. But in this video, the guy used this thing here, used something like this here, where it has the composite and the audio on this side, and then it has SCART. And then he goes to a SCART to HDMI line doubler. And at least with the system he had, it looked really good quality output. So I already have the SCART to HDMI. You know, for those of you that have the Jason's product there for the
Switcheroo.
the switcheroo. I already got everything, so really I just have to add this to the mix. So I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to not use the VCR. I'm going to use something similar to what Ken used, where he had a little cable TV converter.
Cable box, yeah.
Yep, cable box. And so I'm going to go that route there. I haven't had a chance to hook it up, but it's kind of a series of components, but I'm kind of curious to see what quality I'll actually get out of that.
And the cable box takes up much less room than the VCR.
Yes. Yep. I found one, and yeah, it's maybe a little bit bigger than the one that you have that you demonstrated in your video, but be kind of curious to see how that all works. A couple other things I want to show is some joysticks. I've been on the lookout for this one for a couple years, and I would post out on Facebook, and and for obvious reasons here, when I show it, I would get a lot of interesting, I'll use that word, interesting comments on the picture. But Wyco, everybody knows about the Wyco trackball, but they also made a joystick for the color computer called the color computer. It was the Commander, and it looks like this. And I've always wanted to get one.
Right.
And so it's kind of different. It has a little brown bottom there and stuff like that, and has the connector. So
it has switches on the bottom.
It does have the switches on the bottom, and that you can, make it free floating and everything. So, yep.
So it's an analog joystick.
Yep. Yep. It'd be like your deluxe joystick there.
All right. Yep.
Self-centering and everything. So, yeah.
Cool.
So I wanted
that'd be good.
I wanted to get one of those. And then not at the last CoCo Fest because I was unable to go this year, but the year before, this was actually out on the auction. I'd never seen it before. There's a company out there called CH Products. And they made two different joysticks, and this one was actually on the auction, and no one really bid against me. So either no one was interested in the joystick or whatever, but it was this guy here. It's also a self-centering joystick.
They made him for the Apple also.
Yes.
I have one.
Yep. And it has the little adjustments here and the switches to make it free floating as well. What I thought was kind of interesting is the brown cable. A lot of times they're black, but I don't know. It just kind of intrigued me. The brown cable, and it has also a center fire button here as well. So I was kind of happy to get that, and it came with it actually came with the documentation. And when I read it, it talked about another joystick, and so I did a little searching on the archive in Rainbow, and I found an ad, and I didn't have to search very hard. It took me maybe 3 or 4 months, and I was able to pick up their other joystick that they make as well. And this one's more of a kind of a flight stick sort of looking one, but they made two different ones. CH Products did for the CoCo. So, but this one has no adjustments on it other than you can adjust the centering right here.
All right. Two fire buttons though, right?
Yeah, there is 2 fire buttons. There's a trigger, and then there's this one up on top here for your thumb that you could use like this. So, yeah. So I was kind of excited to find those two.
And they weren't yellow.
And they weren't yellow. No, they looked really nice. Let's hear 2 more things here. I do want to order Rick's keyboards replacements, but Mike Rojas was making the replacement. So I picked up a Color Computer 2 and a Color Computer 3 keyboard replacement that Mike was making. So I also want to get one of Rick's as well, because I do have a number of different keyboards that don't work. So I thought I'd try out a couple of the different ones that are out there, and support people's efforts. So really nice. So I look forward to Rick. You'll be seeing an order coming from me on one of those as well. And then lastly, and David Ladd, are you listening?
Uh-oh.
Oh. Boo. So there's a
Dave's awake.
there's a video, or not a video, but a little short little video clip where that we've been playing for years here about David Ladd wanting to plug in like 8 different things, right, to the color computer. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, this is going to be one of those rare multi-packs that's 6 or 8 slots, isn't it?
There was a company out there, PBJ made one, and I think there are a couple different ones, but this is a 5 slot.
Ooh, that's an interesting idea. 5.
So, and it can run off the 12 volts of the color
I count
computer.
6.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 6. Yep, 6. You're correct. Yep, I'm sorry. Yep, I didn't do so well in kindergarten, but anyway.
Not bad for peanut butter and jelly.
That's right. But it's also designed to work with a power pack. So this didn't come with it. I had to go buy this and put my own connector on it, so you can give it the 12 volts that it needs, and it has a little regulator inside.
Big regulator inside.
So, and it plugs in this way. It doesn't go directly. You just have to kind of reach in there and plug that in. And then
where you plug it into a multi-pack?
No, you plug it into the CoCo. You have to open up the little door.
Well, you could plug it into the multi-pack, couldn't you?
I don't know.
Then you'd have 10 sockets. I think you better try it.
I did find mine like that.
You did?
And
okay, good.
It has a fake cartridge ROM pack game over that weird connector.
Oh, to make it easier to plug in and out?
Make more sense how it plugs in and everything, I guess. But yeah, it's the same rig. It just has it's just housed in a ROM pack game on.
Do you think yours is missing?
I don't know if it is or not, because
didn't you have there's 5 versions of them, you said?
Well, there is a couple different versions of it. Okay. There is this one here that I haven't quite figured out how it all works yet. There, a guy was selling some things, and he said, "Would you be interested in this?" Now, it doesn't have the cover on it, but it looks very, very similar to this one. And you can see here, this one only has 3 connectors on it. But you can see where there's a spot right here for more. It's kind of in rough shape here. The little knobs are missing off, so it doesn't stay attached very well. And the power adapter is directly connected in. But what's kind of unusual about this one is the connector right there of how it plugs in.
Ooh, how would you
so you'd have to use some kind of a ribbon cable with an edge card connector on both ends there. So to plug that in, because obviously there's not enough length there to go directly into the CoCo, unless you had the motherboard out. But anyway, yeah. So this one I have played with. I've had a couple different packs in there.
You know what that would be good for a repack.
It could be. Yep. Now, of course, you have to call things up by poking the addresses. Of course, certain things work. Like if you have the floppy drive in one, you could have the CoCo SDC in another. That just works that way without having to have any, because there is no switches on this at all. So it's not like it's port selectable.
Have you tried it already?
Yeah, I've used this one.
Have you? Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm assuming it's using the standard multi-pack address to select the slots?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. The documentation's actually out there on the archive. I happen to have a couple different versions of it. On the archive is Rev C of the manual. I have a Rev B and a Rev E, I think. I haven't really looked at them very closely to see what the differences are. I do want to get this scanned and put the different revs out there just in case. But
now, what does the CoCo have for addressing? Does it have all 6 as spots to shift to?
I haven't looked at the documentation that closely. I only ran it with a floppy drive controller and a CoCo SDC in it.
Okay.
Which those just work as they are. But I'd have to look at the documentation a little closer to see exactly how it calls up all 6 of them.
Do you have?
Yeah, it's run. It should be just like how the bits are set up for the Tandy MPI, because technically with the number of bits that are available, you can address up to 16 slots.
Oh, cool.
If you was to do it. That's the reason why it's possible to do it. It's just no one's really gone that high yet.
Right.
Would your CoCo
Except
go
David.
crispy critters? It could.
So only David is the one who actually needs 16 slots.
Right?
Oh, you
Right?
don't know how many things I could use.
I'd buy one. I'd love 16 slots.
There you go. And then finally, just one other little thing along the multi-pack. I picked this up. Was it last year? Maybe even about a year ago now. A company out there called I guess you could pronounce it Computize, but they made a Y box.
I got Y box. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So it's kind of a nice package. And then I have I think this would be the older version of it because the label's missing off of it. But if you take the cover off, it's labeled in there, made by the same company.
Yeah.
And this one here, it's a little bit cruder looking. It's not as clean, and with the connectors that are on it, but the same concept. So yeah, a couple of things I've added to my collection here. So
yeah, I know several people that did repacks into one Zenith and one XT machine that used those Y cables.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have one in mine. In my repack, I have.
Now, is this better than just the regular Y cable that, they made one that had just a connector on it that you'd plug right into the CoCo and gave you just these two? Or is this essentially doing the same thing?
It's essentially doing the same thing. It just has a nice box.
Yeah, and
right.
Probably not. But the cable that my friends used at the time, they were the 3-slot Y cables, and they ran the RS-232 pack, so they also had to remove the ROMs from that and their Kenton controllers.
Mm-hmm.
So the only device that had a ROM in it was the floppy controller. So
okay.
But then again, that's like what?
I wonder.
Early 90s.
Is there any? Do you know if there's any electronics in the cartridge case of that Computize one?
I
I'm
don't
wondering
think
if
no.
it might be buffered.
Oh,
I'm just
they're
wondering
Y
if there's
cables.
buffering. They're just Ys. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just so the box plugs in well, kind of like that.
Yeah,
MPI
yeah.
I've got has the box for no good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to bust through the label, which I'm a little.
No, that's all right. No.
Well, I'd have to pop a couple of antacid pills before I did that, I suppose.
Well, you could take a flashlight and look in through the end if you wanted.
That's true.
The second one has the look of I had all these boards made. I gotta sell them. I'm just gonna have to scrape up all the
right. So anyway, yeah, it's been a while, so I thought I'd share a few different things with the group. So that's all I got for you guys today.
All right.
Nice.
Only 1 hour.
Anybody else have any?
I've got something that came up in the show. We were talking about routing electronics and KeyCAD and all that kind of stuff. And here is the old way. Let's see if I can turn this around. So
You made a cannon for the CoCo.
Well,
It's
no,
a
this is
didgeridoo.
you could get your local electronics corporation to give you this vellum, crafting vellum, a 1/10 of an inch. So it's the perfect size for electronics, and it's plastic. So you draw your circuit in pencil on this repeatedly until you get it right, and then you ink over it, and then you go give it to the guy at the electronics place, and he makes your boards for you. And it costs a ton of money, and we've gone through 15 drafting pencils and a bunch of indie ink besides. So that was fun.
Oh.
And then
Or
also
you can blow in the end and use it as a didgeridoo.
Right. Well, I thought I was saving for my future by buying 20,000 feet of stuff. So I've cornered the market in drafting vellum. If anyone ever needs any, let me know how many acres you want. I'll send you some. And then I was finally shamed after looking at the Game On Challenge to installing VCC so I can actually do my games now and not take pictures of a CM8 when I occasionally have the time. And that was my CoCo of the week. Oh, I took it away. See? Look.
Well, now that you have VCC, we expect to see you on the
Hit enter.
live show on Fridays.
Any news on your Orchestra 180?
Actually, I worked on that. I got all of the pieces put in it. And I plugged it in, and one channel works great, one channel works decent, and two channels I don't hear. I may be out of current, but I also out of time, so I didn't get to plug it in a multi-pack, which will decide that really quickly because it will suck a little
What's
current
the
into
empty
it.
socket?
Oh, that's for a ROM if I wanted to like play with a Orc
But
90
you don't
ROM
have to have it.
or do a wavetable thing. No, this is just a prototype. It has parts and places for all kinds of crap that isn't required. It's mainly a big chunky design. I can bodge wire and hand solder. So whatever mistakes I made, and there will be some, I can fix, and then I'll crank out the final one with all the fixes.
Well, there's no smoke, so you're doing well.
So far, yeah. In fact, that's why it hasn't been plugged into a multi-pack yet, because I don't want to risk my limited number of multi-packs with this stupid thing until I'm sure it at least works partially.
Cool.
It's kind of funny because the tones that this basic can make poking to it is more of a low buzz. I think doing all four channels is 5 milliseconds per channel, so 20 milliseconds to come back around again. So you wouldn't get much of a buzz, you know. But yeah,
you could try. There's various music programs, including Sockmasters.
Yeah, Sockmasters Mod Player should work in stereo. I just need to hear all four channels going, so I know this works, and then I can make a decent one, and I'll send you a decent one you can play with. And
cool.
And there, because you know it doesn't have to be musical to prove it works. It just has to.
No.
You know.
Just got to make sure you got 4 channels. Yeah.
So you know we're getting there. It's
you need to put some lights on there. So,
when
the music's going through, you're getting a light show.
Anybody else?
I could quickly show my game because last week I didn't have it running in VCC, so I can probably show a clearer picture than what I had last week.
Yeah,
so I will attempt to share the screen and share the. Actually, I won't share the sound because it's a bit loud, so I'll just do the video. Okay. Now, is that coming up?
Yep.
All right. So last week I was saying how I've added background patterns or colors just to detail the backgrounds a bit better. Before it was originally just a black background and I just put all the objects on that. Whereas I didn't like that. I wanted to have, especially in the 3rd level where you're jumping across a river, I wanted the river to be blue, not black. So this is just showing the final graphics. So I won't play it because I'm still patching it. The frog, the kangaroo doesn't work yet. So there's that one there where you're jumping across the freeway. So you can see all the road lanes there and the trucks and stuff moving on it. The next level, which I've got a little cheat function for, I'll just jump over to it. This is the stockyard. So what we got is cows and sheep walking down their their field, I guess, and in the middle part is a moving fence, which you've got to negotiate to get across to the other side. And the 3rd level is the river scene. So I've been able to get a bit of a blue background going on that. And it looks a bit more like a river than what it did before. And of course, as you progress in the game, there'll be different number of objects. The objects will change, the speed will change. So it's getting there. Anyway,
it looks like multi-pack slots going by.
It does a bit, yeah. All right, see if I can stop.
It's very colorful. which is
Yeah,
good
well,
because this
definitely
is for a color
recognizable.
computer.
That's the idea. I was getting to the point where I really need more color. I mean, I had 8 colors in this mode, but I didn't have, because of the color limitations that you have in dealing with semi-graphics, it wouldn't allow me to put 2 colors per byte, and that restricted the graphics a bit. So I had it black, which worked. It looked all right, but I just thought it looked a bit bland. So I thought there's got to be a way I could put color in the background without being seeing that clash of the color limitations of semi-graphics mode. And this is what I come up with, and it looks all right. So
sure,
yeah, I'll leave it at that, and just now finish the game.
So this is
All right.
gonna pay for the garage for your.
Yeah, I need a garage for the Ferraris or a bigger box.
All right, Ken, you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Let's. Do we want to break, or we want to go into the news or the high score?
Whatever we want to do. Sorry, I was just. Welcome everybody to the CoCoTALK Game On Challenge of the Week results video. This week we played Galactic Attack. There were a total of 14 players. We had Mark B with 4,230, Nine Finger Tom 5,100, Mr. Dave 6309 7,460, David Craker 8,590, Canadian Retro Things 9,400, Ed Rhodes 9,570, Chris B 9,910, Shenley 9,980, Sabhead 10,780, Rich N 11,720, Buck Owens 12,000, Jim Rye 15,080, Paul Shoemaker 15,840, and the number one score this week is Brian Walsh with 19,990. Oh, so close to 20,000. Thanks everybody that played, and we will see you next week.
Nice.
All right, there we go. So, Galactic Attack. That was one I had not played before. I do, however, have a few copies of the cartridge. I don't know if...
Yeah.
There we go.
I was starting to get the hang of the game at the end.
Show the end.
Oh, I'm backwards. Anyway.
Not here, you're not.
Oh.
Time I played it, testing my VCC, I outscored everything I ever did with a joystick on a CoCo. So
See, is that in focus? Yeah.
Got it.
So I actually have about, I was going through my cartridge collection. I think I have 3 copies of this. So, yeah, so this was a game actually released by Radio Shack back in 1982. So, and during the Galaga craze, I guess, of the time. So,
and it plays on a 3. Okay.
Yeah, I played it on the live stream last night. I was playing on my CoCo 3, and yeah, with no problems. And it is one that only requires 4K of RAM for if you have the cartridge to play. So,
do you have the instructions that come with it?
I do not. I was looking for that. It's one of the ones that I'm missing the instruction book for.
Okay.
But somebody did post in Discord part of the instructions about the night scene that you can get if you finish a wave without anybody getting by you and going through the bottom of the screen. You go into a night wave, which is worth more money or more points. So I'm not sure where they got that from. I didn't actually even look in the archive to see if there is a instruction book or not, but yeah, so like Galaga, you have ships coming down at you, but they are a little bit more maneuverable than Galaga or Galaxian ships. They can go back up and kind of avoid your shots a little bit better than and change direction. So does anybody else have any memories of playing this game, or
Nope.
Nope. I think Jim Rye was saying that this is one that he actually had when he was a kid. So for tips and tricks, obviously, to score more points in this game, you've got to try and finish a wave off without letting any of them get by you, and then you get that night wave where the ships are worth a lot more. So yeah, anybody else that played it have any tips or tricks? Come on, people. Some people must have played it. Mark B, I'm looking at you.
I tried to...
What?
Wait,
Tips or tricks for playing the game?
Well, like Brian was saying, and I did find it a little better staying in the middle.
Yeah.
So the self-centering joystick helped a little bit there.
Yeah, I know people were finding it a little bit weird to play because it's kind of a 5-position screen. You've got the middle, left, right, and far right, rather than actually moving across the screen smoothly. You'll move to just 5 different positions.
So it doesn't play well with the Black Beauty?
I think it's more designed for the Black Beauty, because if you have the if you have a self-centering joystick, it always moves you back to the center of the screen whenever you let go of the joystick. So where with the Black Beauty, you can leave the joystick. Well, if you put it on free floating, I actually found on free floating, it's a little bit easier to play.
Now, watching the live show, I noticed that most of the game, of course, plays on a green background.
Yeah.
But every now and then I saw a black background.
Well, that's the night mode.
What was that? That's the night mode.
That's the night mode. So if you finish a screen off without any of the ships flying through the bottom of the screen getting by you, then you go into the night mode, which is worth a lot more points.
Right.
And if you can finish a night mode off without anybody getting by you, you go into another one, and that's how you get good scores. I didn't do that very often.
Yeah, I noticed that I had a quick look through YouTube and saw a black background. I thought, oh, black background, but it had a green border. So I assume that's a VCC thing. That's a limitation in that early version of VCC. Because you normally can't do that. You can't get a green border and a black, or can you?
I'm not sure, actually. I can't remember. I think I had on my CoCo 3, I think I had a black border. I'm not sure. How about I bring up the
video? You might
video
see it there,
of yesterday. Share, play, screen. There we go. See if I can find a spot where. Oh, there's the Tim Hortons truck that the most Canadian truck that Mark could find.
A donut dilemma truck with the donuts on the wheels.
Okay, so yeah, so here's
Okay,
so
yeah. Now
on
look
the
at
emulator
that.
there. Yeah.
Pause that. You normally can't get that because he's got artifacting, which indicates a black and white mode, but you've got green borders. So I wonder what version of VCC is, because the older versions had a trouble in emulating the border correctly.
Well,
that
and
should
here,
be white.
And here I am on my CoCo 3, and I'm getting the same thing.
But you're not getting artifacting in the middle, are you?
I
No.
think
You only get green. Okay, or do you?
No, it's just my resolution wasn't very good here. But it was.
Well, I was running 2.1D.
What are they up to now? 2 point something.
As far as I know, that is the latest.
Hang on, I'll have a look.
If not, I'm behind.
I haven't been keeping up with VCC.
You are.
But
I think there's a 2.1.05. I think
0.06.
0.6. Okay.
2106. Yeah.
So you might have the version that has color problems, or it doesn't emulate the borders right.
You know what? I'm not playing at this moment.
No, that's Jim Rye.
This was the time when my internet was down.
CoCo VGA can do it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I was looking at it thinking, what video mode is that? Anyway.
So here I have mine switched over to RGB just to make the screen a little bit clearer. So let's see. I think I should be.
Yeah, see that mode there didn't look right. So
don't give me an ad.
Modified.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on.
Anyway, whatever.
There, so anyway, it was a fairly quiet night on the it was a fairly quiet night on the live stream. So yeah, I mean, I'm getting color on there. It's dark because I have it in RGB mode, but I got a green back border on mine too, and that's real CoCo 3 there.
On the left, you mean?
Yeah, the smaller screen.
But you weren't getting red and blues.
I'd have to look at it again. I think I was just getting blue. No. Yeah, I think I was just getting blue on that.
Anyway.
Yeah, so it was a game where each individual game lasted a very short amount of time. If this was an arcade game, it would have definitely eaten up your quarters. But yeah, we only had, I think, 3 of us playing on the live stream last night. But
interestingly, the aliens always move in the same direction, I noticed, either left or right. All of them.
Yeah, they always moved a little bit diagonal. But
like you won't get one flying. You won't get an alien flying left and another one flying right.
Well, they do. Sometimes they'll switch direction and go up. Yeah, they'll switch the direction, and rather than going in a downward diagonal, if they go in an upward diagonal, they'll go opposite.
Right. I think he means that all of them go. All of them on the screen at the same time are going the same direction, left or right.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But yeah.
Those they all either go down to the left or down to the right, but every now and then one of them will go in the opposite, up to the left or up to the right. But they do always, they tend to all go
follow
the same.
that pattern. Yeah,
they're in formation.
They don't scatter.
Nope.
They're basically always in the same sort of a grouping.
They fly in formations.
Yeah. But for an early CoCo game and one that only takes 4K, it was a pretty good game. Very challenging.
4K, well, it was a ROM pack, so it would have had.
I mean, you could run it on with the ROM pack. You could run it on a 4K machine though. So
yeah, that's right.
But definitely. Looking at the score, it was quite. I think on the author's part there, it was quite wishful thinking that somebody would ever get over 100,000 on it. I would like to see if anybody could actually make 1 million and wrap it, because by the time you reach about 15,000, those things are going so fast it's almost impossible. So we didn't have to speed this one up to make it hard.
No.
Anyways, does anybody else have anything to say about the game? That
I tried to play this, but I have a bad left elbow, so I couldn't keep pushing the fire button.
Yes, that was something that I complained about too, is that it should have had an auto fire, because after about half an hour, boy, your finger gets tired of hitting that trigger.
And it was only a one-shot cannon too.
Yeah. But it definitely would have been helpful if you could hold the fire button down and not have to constantly press. But other than that, like I said, pretty good early game for the color computer. I think didn't see a lot of complaining. 1982.
82.
Yeah.
82, yeah.
And it was one of the actual Radio Shack Tandy releases.
Yep.
And the author was a person by the name of Lou Hayen. Lou Hayen from Image Producers.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that was Galactic Attack. So, I guess it's time to see what is up for next week.
Yay!
Because it's coming up on a month before Halloween, it's time to start maybe some Halloween style games.
Nightmare.
So, anybody know this one?
Poltergeist.
That is correct. So, Poltergeist is the game that we will be playing next for this next week. It was a request. I believe, I'm not sure if somebody requested it to Sloopy or what, but Sloopy passed it on to me. So that is that. And just also announced that next week, early announcement for the game for next week, which is Robot Nightmare. So in 1 week, so you have one more week to get this from Ken Reichard's site. I don't know,
I'll
Mark,
post link.
if you want to post the link for that. And also, talking to Mr. Dave 6309, we're going to have a special giveaway, which will be announced next week for a random participant of the game next for Robot Nightmare. So,
okay,
something for everybody to get excited about.
All right.
And that giveaway will happen after we play Robot Nightmare, and anybody that participated in playing that game will be eligible to win the giveaway. And that's all I'm going to tell you.
Is it under $100?
Yes. Wait, with or without tax?
Yes.
It'll be a unique, one of a kind giveaway. So, and that will be announced next week on what it's going to be. So everybody has to participate. We have to get Ken Reichard a new Ferrari.
Okay.
All right, that's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Well, that
All
about
right.
wraps it up. That was everything I had on my list.
Yep.
There's
Don't
still
forget
another
to
3
visit-
hours to go.
Don't forget to visit Ron's Garage when you get a chance. That's about it.
Got any?
Ron's Garage.
Got any more? Got anything to show us, Ron?
No. No,
That
just
reminds
go
me.
there, check it out.
I have a whole bunch of pictures of floppy disks to post on your floppy
Oh, cool.
site.
Yeah, that's fun.
I got
David's
at VCF. I got a whole bunch of floppy disks.
Save it for when David's back in.
Yeah.
Well, let me go ahead and run the outro then.
All right, you guys.
Coming this October to the CoCoTALK Game On Challenge. 1, 2, robots coming for you. 3, 4, they enter through the door. 5, 6, hear their ominous clicks. 7, 8, it's a terrible fate. 9, 10, here's a nightmare again. This concludes another episode of CoCoTALK, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy Color Computer, MC10, and Dragon systems. For all things CoCoTALK, visit us on the web at CoCoTalk.live. We'd love to hear from you. Send feedback, suggestions, even segments via email to CoCoTalk@CoCoTalk.live. Consider supporting the show with a purchase of merchandise from our retro swag shop at 8bit256.com. If you'd like to become a patron of the show, click on the Patreon link on our website, CoCoTalk.live. CoCoTalk would not exist without the community, its cast, crew, and contributors. Thanks go to Alan Murphy, Amigos Retro Gaming, Bill Noble, Brian Joyce, Brian Weaver, Curtis Boyle, D. Bruce Moore, Danny O'Connor, David Ladd, Eric Canales, George Jansen, Grant Leedy, James Diffendapper, Jason Reichert, Jim Brain, Ken Reichert, Ken Waters, Mark Bosley, Mark Overholzer, Mikey Furman, Mr. Dave 6309, Nick Marentes, Nick Marotta, Nick Marotta, Nick Marotta, Paul Fiscarelli, Richard Lorbieski, Rick Adams, Rick Hewlin, Rob Inman, Ron Delvaux, Samuel Gimes, Sloopy Malibu, Steve Bjork, Terry Steggy, Tom C., and many, many more. Please help support the CoCo community. A list of various contributors and resources are available at imacoconut.com. That's IMACOCONUT.com. The original CoCoTalk theme song is copyright 2008 by D. Bruce Moore and Greg Sheeler. The new CoCoTalk theme song is copyright 2020 by D. Bruce Moore. Both are mixed, mastered, and produced by D. Bruce Moore. CoCo forever!
Oh.
Well, Jason, we missed you.
Yeah.
You weren't here.
Wherever he may roam.
Yep. We had a little bit of Stevie.
But Sloopy's here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to say, Sloopy?
No. No, I don't.
And a few words.
No.
Okay. Well.
All right.
Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.